Chapter 50-75. If you don't know how to speak, then shut your pig mouth. Yi Qing Luo glanced at him coldly. Although her words were spoken lightly. But when the young lady shifted her gaze away, looking at the surrounding majestic castle. Her pretty face, which was as pretty as a painting, was still a little bit solemn, which was hard to detect. Under the wide peach blossom robe, the young lady's fingers were clenched tightly. It showed that right now, her heart was not at ease. Ah Xian. Right in this main city. If she saw him, she must throw a tantrum with him. He actually dared to abandon her, running over to meet this whatever devil Hall. And even creating the news of marriage with the devil Hall. Even if it was fake. This debt must be settled. Yi Qing Luo's mind was filled with different thoughts. She didn't discover. Not too long after the devil ship sailed into Devil Head City. Not too far away, in a devil ship, a pair of treacherous sinister eyes stared unblinkingly. At the direction of Madame Huang Xi's devil ship. Just as Yi Qing Luo sensed something amiss, she raised her eyes and looked over. A bam sound was heard. The devil ships collided. The two devil ships were jolted to a halt in midair. What happened? Madame Huang Xi's voice was heard from the devil ship. Madam, our ship has collided with Jiang family's devil ship. The person operating the devil ship replied. Jiang family? Madame Huang Xi frowned slightly. What's the meaning of Jiang family colliding with my devil ship? Let's go out and take a look. While at this moment, Yi Qing Luo, who was standing outside the devil ship, suffered the greatest impact. She didn't know if it was her misperception. When that devil search ship collided, it intentionally collided towards the direction where she was standing. Yi Qing Luo retreated a few steps from the impact. Luckily Zhu Sha reacted in time, using her body to block Yi Qing Luo, allowing her to regain her footing. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows congealed slightly, as she looked towards the devil ship in front. She saw a young lady dressed in a bright and colorful skirt, looking at her provocatively. The young lady was around 16 to 17 years old, and looked rather good. But at the instant when Yi Qing Luo looked over, the expression on the woman's face had already been replaced by panic. She quickly walked to the edge of the demonic ship and said in a soft voice, Madam, I'm sorry. It's my fault. I had to pester the captain and wanted to try controlling the ship. That's why I accidentally bumped into you. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed as she glanced sideways at her back. He realized that Madame Huang Xi had already walked out. She sized up the woman in front of her with interest. Interesting. A woman who was possessed by a drama queen was truly incredible. Miss Jiang. Madame Huang Xi's expression was cold as she looked at the woman in front of her in a dignified manner. This is Devil Head City, even if you want to play around, you should know the situation. The woman immediately lowered her head and obediently admitted her mistake. Shuang, knows her mistake. Shuang, will definitely not cause trouble again. This junior is so obedient, and his attitude of admitting his mistake is also good. No matter what, Madame Huang Xi could not hold on to it. But when Madame Huang Xi just walked out from the boat, she saw Yi Qing Luo flying out from the aftershocks of the collision. If it wasn't for Cinnabar, the young girl's small body would probably be heavily injured. If she wanted an explanation for Muyu. If this spread out, then it would mean that Madame Huang Xi was unforgiving, making things difficult for a junior. But if she just let it go like this, Muyu's grievance, who would shoulder it? Just as she was thinking about how to choose. The young lady dressed in peach blossom robe curled her pink lips as her voice was gentle. Since you know you're in the wrong, then let it go. Madame Huang Xi looked at Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo gave her a gentle smile, and after that, her vision looked towards the woman on the demonic ship as her lips curled up indifferently. Seventh Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 50-76. But eldest Miss Jiang. The young girl's voice was still soft and gentle, but the words that came out of her mouth were incomparably sharp. If you are stupid, then don't come out and make a fool of yourself. Not everyone is as kind-hearted as Madam. Just a few words of, I know I'm wrong, and I'm sorry, will make her forgive your stupidity. We are not your mother, we have no obligation to tolerate your stupidity. You. Jiang Shuang'er's eyes widened in anger as her jade finger pointed at Yiqing Luo. What thing are you? How dare you insult me? Yiqing Luo casually used a look like she was sizing up goods as she scanned Jiang Shuang'er from head to toe. To tell the truth, eldest Miss Jiang doesn't like to hear it. You slut. Jiang Shuang'er suddenly leapt up and leapt onto Madame Huang Xi's magic ship. Yiqing Luo noticed that when Jiang Shuang'er leapt over, an extremely oppressive energy was emitting from her body. That energy didn't seem like profound energy, but it felt the same as profound energy. In the air, there were layers of ripples, following which, it spread towards her. The feeling of danger approaching made Yiqing Luo's expression congealed slightly. This was the magic that was used in the magic region? It was equivalent to their profound energy, it was the same logic. Only there was a slight difference. The incoming magic qi brought along an undetectable killing intent. Yiqing Luo's slender brows knitted tightly as a glint of astonishment flashed past her eyes. She and this eldest Miss Jiang had no enmity, and this was the first time they met. Why? It seemed that the eldest Miss Jiang had come for her. Colliding with the ship was the same. And it was the same now. As though she couldn't wait to kill her. Just as Yiqing Luo was about to take out her broadsword, a soft hand was placed on her arm. Following that, she was pulled back by a few steps. A slender figure stood in front of her. Madame Huang Xi waved her sleeves as she blocked the incoming magic qi. Eldest Miss Jiang. Madame Huang Xi's tone was tainted with a tinge of anger. Miss Mu is on my ship, so she is my esteemed guest. Eldest Miss Jiang jumped onto my magic ship without any explanation and attacked my esteemed guest. What logic is this? Her tone was filled with aggressiveness. How could the young Jiang Shuang'er withstand such an imposing demeanor without being angry? Jiang Shuang'er's face suddenly turned pale. The demonic power backfired, causing her to lean against the edge of the boat. Madam, it's her, she humiliated me. You were the one who crashed into the ship first. Do you think you're in the right? Madame Huang Xi snorted. So this is how the Jiang family teaches their daughter. This madam would like to seek guidance from Madame Jiang. Madame Shuang knows his wrongs. When she heard that her parents were involved, Jiang Shuang'er was so scared that she fell to the ground. Shuang'er was just angry, and couldn't think straight. In terms of power and status, the status of the First Lady was much higher than that of the Jiang family. However, the news of Madame Huang Xi being poisoned had caused her prestige to be greatly reduced. But, this does not mean. How could the First Lady tolerate other families stepping on her head? Madame Huang Xi sneered as she looked at the opposite magic ship. Bring your young miss back and help me pass a message to your mistress. I will pay you a visit in a few days. Saying that, she didn't care about Jiang Shuang'er's grievances and her submissive tone. Madame Huang Xi didn't bother about it as she pulled Yiqing Luo's wrist. Miss, let's go in. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 50-77. Yiqing Luo followed Madame Huang Xi into the ship and turned back to take a look at Jiang Shuang'er. But it met the vicious haze in the lady's eyes. She frowned. How is this eldest Miss Jiang's reputation in the Devil region? Madame Huang Xi shook her head. Hai Yun, who was standing beside her, said, Eldest Miss Jiang's reputation is not bad. She is well educated and her innate talent is very high. She is able to stand firm in the Jiang family. This was the reputation on the surface. She paused for a moment and continued, but eldest Miss Jiang is after all Castle Lord Jiang's daughter, so the outside world will give Castle Lord Jiang some face. From what I understand, this eldest Miss Jiang was raised in a pampered manner and her temper is very bad. Bad temper, I can tell. Yiqing Luo was more curious about. Why did Jiang Shuang'er have enmity towards her? She didn't seem to know anyone in this devil domain, right? This inexplicable hostility was truly unfathomable. If that Jiang Shuang'er comes to find trouble with you, tell me. Madame Huang Xi patted her hand. Yiqing Luo smiled and nodded. This interlude ended just like that. But enemies were bound to meet. The devil ship stopped at the place where Devil Head City docked specially for devil ships. Yiqing Luo and the rest just walked out of the hall. Jiang Shuang'er and the rest happened to walk out of the hall. Just like that. They met on a narrow path. Jiang Shuang'er stared at Yiqing Luo as she bit her cherry lips. But she was a little afraid of Madame Huang Xi, so she could only control her temper. She pinched her fingers as her eyes turned red from the pain and walked towards Madame Huang Xi in quick steps. Madam. I'm really sorry earlier, Shuang'er shouldn't be so rash. Her voice wasn't loud but it wasn't soft either. Now was the eve of Lord Demon Hall and Overlord's wedding. The Devil Ship's hall was filled with people from various continents in the Devil region. When he saw this scene, he immediately turned his gaze over. Jiang Shuang'er's eyes were red as she crossed her hands and bowed towards Madame Huang Xi. Madame is magnanimous and forgive Shuang'er's rash actions. Shuang'er will definitely turn over a new leaf. As she said that, her voice started to choke. From this look, it seemed as though Madame Huang Xi was bullying a young lady. This was probably Jiang Shuang'er's purpose. Madame Huang Xi's expression was slightly cold. Her beautiful and elegant face was covered with a layer of coldness. Eldest Miss Jiang, I have already said what I should say. What is the meaning of this? Madame's health isn't good. Shuang'er doesn't want to make Madame angry. Jiang Shuang'er sniffed aggrievedly. Shuang'er made Madame unhappy just now. Shuang'er has always felt guilty. Shuang'er just hopes that Madame won't harm your health because of Shuang'er. She pursed her lips and looked at Madame Huang Xi with an aggrieved expression. Madame Huang Xi, I'm sorry. Saying that, she knelt down in front of Madame Huang Xi. He cried, threw a tantrum, and knelt down. How would others view Madame Huang Xi? Madame Huang Xi did not expect Jiang Shuang'er to make such a move. She frowned. Miss Jiang, what are you doing? When did I say that I would be angry because of you? But. Jiang Shuang'er bit her lower lip, her voice trembling. The surrounding people all had different looks in their eyes as they stared at them and discussed in low voices. After all, no matter what race. Gossip was human nature. Moreover, it was gossip about the First Lady. They must eat melons. Hai Yun took Madame Huang Xi's arm and calmed her down. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5078. Madame Huang Xi looked at the lady who was kneeling in front of her. Her eyes were misty with tears, as though she had been wronged. She couldn't help but burst out laughing. She looked at Jiang Shuang'er indifferently and was about to speak. Suddenly, a fair and soft little hand blocked in front of her. After that, she saw a peach-robed young lady slowly walking towards Jiang Shuang'er. Just like that, she stood arrogantly in front of Jiang Shuang'er. The person who Jiang Shuang'er was kneeling on had become Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo looked down at Jiang Shuang'er from above, with her eyelids raised, with a sense of nobility. Jiang Shuang'er's words were all stuck in her throat. She raised her head and looked at the young lady in front of her, as her cheeks instantly turned hot. This slut. She actually made her kneel on her knees? She wanted to stand up. But the surrounding were all onlookers. If she stood up, the plan would have failed. Jiang Shuang'er was so angry that she kept cursing in her heart. However, the young girl with black hair and peach-colored clothes was smiling brightly. Like a blooming flower, in full bloom with a dazzling charm. Her pink lips curled as she looked at Jiang Shuang'er indifferently. I'm afraid the person eldest Miss Jiang is apologizing to is the wrong person. She straightened her body and crossed her arms. Her posture was disdainful and a little lazy. The person you almost hurt is me. The person you almost killed is also me. Madam saw that I have no power and could only let you, the eldest miss of the Jiang family, bully me, so she became the embodiment of justice and stood out to say a few words for me. Whether or not to forgive you, I should be the one asking. How did it come out from eldest Miss Jiang's mouth? It became. Madam is not willing to forgive you? The young lady's words were clear and her voice was clear. Just a few sentences and she had directly removed Madam Huang Xi from the picture. It became a dispute between the two young people. You, what nonsense are you talking about? Why would I kill you? Jiang Shuang'er didn't expect Yiqing Luo to stand out at this moment. She stuttered and immediately denied, I just want to apologize for my earlier actions. If you want to apologize, it means that you know that you were wrong when you tried to kill me with the demonic ship. Yiqing Luo directly snatched over Jiang Shuang'er's words, the person who almost died because of your mischief was me, so. You should apologize to me, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Jiang Shuang'er's eyes reddened. The surrounding people were stunned when they heard this. The eldest miss of the Jiang family actually used a demonic ship to ram people? It was no wonder that the lady was so angry. Those who originally felt sorry for Jiang Shuang'er and whispered that Madame Huang Xi was unforgiving had changed their tune. Jiang Shuang'er had never experienced such humiliation before. Her face turned red, and it took her a long time to say, aren't you fine? Didn't I apologize too? Why don't you let me go? Oh, I'm fine, so you're not wrong, right? If something happens to me, does that mean I deserve it? Yiqing Luo couldn't help but burst out laughing. Her smile was bright and beautiful, but there wasn't a trace of emotion in her eyes. Your apology doesn't mean that I must accept it. Also, if you want to apologize, figure out who you're apologizing to and show your sincerity. Instead of. An apology is used by you to put on a show, trying to make use of the innocent crowd to clear your name, and then help you to force Madame Huang Xi to forgive you? The young lady's words were sharp and forceful. So sharp that Jiang Shuang'er's eyes turned red and her face flushed red. After saying these words, Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly. I don't really want to forgive you, so. Since you're so guilty, then continue to kneel here. Chapter 50-79. Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled up even more, her long and narrow eyes curved into a cold arc. Who knows, after kneeling for a long time, I might choose to forgive you. She said, Miss Jiang, you feel guilty so easily. I guess, you won't be willing to get up without my forgiveness, right? Jiang Shuang'er. What an aggrieved feeling. The young girl was very direct. She used her previous words to rebuke her. How could she say no? But, was she really going to kneel until the girl forgave her? If he really did that. She was afraid that she, Jiang Shuang'er, would be a joke in Devil Head City. Jiang Shuang'er clenched her fists tightly as her bright red eyes stared unblinkingly at Yiqing Luo. In the eyes of outsiders, Jiang Shuang'er seemed as though she was shocked by Yiqing Luo's words, as she couldn't believe it and was extremely astonished. But Yiqing Luo and Jiang Shuang'er's eyes met. He could clearly see the warning and anger in the man's eyes. Then, Jiang Shuang'er's eyelids rolled and she fell back weakly. Eldest miss, eldest miss. The maidservants of the Jiang family immediately helped Jiang Shuang up and called out to her in panic. However, Jiang Shuang kept her eyes closed and remained motionless. Then, after a period of chaos, Jiang Shuang was carried out of the hall of the demonic ship by the people of the Jiang family. Yi Qing Luo, she felt like laughing. Let's go. Madame Huang Xi patted Yi Qing Luo's shoulder lightly and then gazed towards the direction where Jiang Shuang and the others had left. She paused for a moment, then said, "Let me handle this kind of thing. You've just arrived here, and if you make enemies, it won't be good for you in Devil Head City." Madame Huang Xi could naturally tell. The young girl's actions just now were to help her out of this predicament. He didn't want her to be involved in the Jiang family's matter. The girl had already helped her a lot. If she wanted to repay the young girl, she should protect her well. However, he didn't expect that the young girl would still protect him. Yi Qing Luo smiled indifferently. The barefooted are not afraid of the shoes. You have a lot to bear, but I don't need to worry about the consequences. In any case, she wouldn't be able to stay in the infernal domain for long. Moreover, she had come to find a Xian. This meant that he would definitely ruin this unprecedented and grand wedding ceremony in the demon realm. At that time, wouldn't they still become enemies? Therefore, it didn't matter. I don't want other things to get in the way of what you want to do. Madame Huang Xi smiled elegantly. You don't have to worry too much about me. I am after all the First Lady. Even if the Jiang family wants to stand on my head, they will have to see if they have the qualifications. The two looked at each other and smiled. He didn't mention anything about the Jiang clan again. Yi Qing Luo directly followed Madame Huang Xi and stayed in the palace which the Devil Hall had arranged for Madame Huang Xi. He entered the main castle of Devil Head City, which was also known as the Devil Palace Castle. Yi Qing Luo sized up the surroundings. A palm-sized night pearl hung at regular intervals in the complex and dark castle, illuminating the entire castle. But in the style of this castle, Yi Qing Luo felt even more strange. Who would have thought that the Devil Hall actually liked this style? As for Madame Huang Xi's palace, it was slightly more lively. It wasn't that dark. After Madame Huang Xi and the rest had settled down, Madame Huang Xi found Yi Qing Luo and asked, "Miss Mu, I intend to go to the main hall to meet the Devil Hall. Do you want to travel together?" Devil Hall. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as her lips curled. "Of course I want to go. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love." Chapter 50-80. That was the Devil Hall that coveted her man and even announced that they wanted to marry her man. She really wanted to meet him. Look at what that bastard looks like. Huang Sifu nodded and smiled as elegantly as an orchid. She pulled Yi Qing Luo's hand over and patted it gently, "But this is after all the Demon Hall's castle, so don't be too rash, understand?" Yi Qing Luo lazily pouted her pink lips. "I'm following you over, so naturally I'm representing your first husband Rao's face, so I won't mess around." If it was her. Naturally, she was fearless. Anyway, the ultimate goal was to find Dmo Xian. But now, she was following Madame Huang Xi to meet the Devil Hall. That was Huang Sifu being forgiving. If she did something, everyone would only believe that this was done under Huang Sifu's mercy. No matter what, he couldn't cheat Madame Huang Xi. Madame Huang Xi's expression softened. She lowered her voice and said, "If there's a chance, I will help you ask for an audience with the Overlord." Yi Qing Luo laughed softly. Was Madame Huang Xi trying to help her to mess up that Devil Hall's Grand Rao's wedding ceremony? He was only going to greet the Lord of the Demon Palace. Madame Huang Xi only brought along her personal maid Hai Yun and Yi Qing Luo. 3 people had just left their room. A servant dressed in black came forward. "Where would you like to go, Madame Huang Xi? Do you need me to accompany you?" Madame Huang Xi's expression didn't change as she spoke indifferently. Lord Devil Hall is about to get married. This madam would like to go and greet Lord Devil Hall, as well as give him a wedding gift. She glanced at Hai Yun. Hai Yun respectfully held a tray with both hands, which was covered with a red velvet cloth. After the servant sized up the three of them, he had a respectful expression on his face. Recently, the Demon Palace Lord has been busy with the wedding matters. I don't know if he has the time right now. Allow me to report to him so that Madam doesn't have to make a wasted trip. Madame Huang Xi waved her hands, indicating for him to report. After the man left, Yi Qing Luo tugged Huang Sifu's sleeve. This place, has it always been like this? The servant was obviously waiting at the door. The feeling he gave Yi Qing Luo was like watching them. Moreover, it restricted their freedom. She was going to inform Madame Huang Xi so that she wouldn't have to waste her time. In reality, Madame Huang Xi still needed the permission of the Devil Hall's Great Rao before she could meet him. As her first husband, Madame Rao Huang Xi had to do this. Not to mention the others. This Devil Hall. Were they guarding against all the people who came to Devil Head City like wolves? The Devil region is not peaceful. It is normal for Lord Devil Hall to act this way. Huang Sifu was already used to it. If they were to come to the Devil Phoenix continent, I would also be worried. Yi Qing Luo spread out her hands. I don't really understand the concerns of the higher-ups. The two of them faced each other. The servant had already come over. He bowed respectfully towards the three of them. Lord Devil Hall happens to be free. Please follow me. Madame Huang Xi nodded slightly. The three of them followed the servant, turning here and there. The overall style of the castle leaned toward the dark style. But after Yi Qing Luo stepped into the guest hall, it was a completely different scene. The entire hall was magnificent, grand, and luxurious. A slender figure sat lazily on the main throne. That throne seemed to be made out of black stone, sparkling with black rays. The lady was dressed in a black feather long dress, dragging on the ground, showing off her slender and graceful figure. The moment Yi Qing Luo entered, at first glance, she met that lady's eyes. Chapter 50-81. The lady's looks could topple a city. That kind of city toppling, cold elegance, with an arrogant nobility. Her beauty. Not like Huang Sifu's elegance. Not like Yi Qing Luo's flamboyant beauty. But a kind of exuding a noble charm which made one submit to her. Yi Qing Luo congealed slightly as her long and narrow eyes raised frivolously. This Devil Hall was not bad looking. It wasn't a big white lotus, but a black lotus. Devil Hall Lord, long time no see. Madame Huang Xi went forward and took a look at Hai Yun. Congratulations on Devil Hall Lord's wedding, this is a token of my appreciation. Hai Yun immediately presented the gift. The elegant and languid lady slowly straightened her slender waist. A head of jet black hair was like a waterfall, cascading down her back. It added a few more points of charm to her noble and cold elegance. Madame Huang Xi has spent a lot of money. Her clear and melodious voice was extremely pleasant to the ears in this hall. I am already very happy that Madame is able to attend my wedding. Madame Huang Xi laughed lightly. I didn't expect Devil Hall Lord to marry the Overlord. She pretended to be casual as she continued, the Overlord rarely steps into the Devil's domain and it was because of you that he agreed to marry you in the Devil's domain. Devil Hall Duran laughed softly as his brows were filled with a chilly smile. Devil Hall Lord was obviously delighted by Huang Sifu's words. She raised her hand and her soft wrist curled up as she gently brushed a poppy hairpin on her hair. I didn't expect the Overlord to be willing to marry me in the Devil's domain. Madame Huang Xi naturally understood that obvious action, that hairpin is a gift from the Overlord. It suits Devil Hall Lord very well. The Lord of the Demon Royal Hall lowered his eyes and smiled. His noble and cold temperament became much more relaxed. He personally made it for me. Although there are some flaws, it is a token of Dizun's sincerity. I have always worn it. The Overlord and Devil Hall Decay are really affectionate. Madame Huang Xi's eyes revealed a glint of envy. This glint of envy was appropriate. After being noticed by the Devil Hall, Madame Huang Xi lowered her eyes. This madam has always heard of the legends of Dizun, and is extremely respectful towards Dizun. I wonder if Lord Devil Hall can introduce me to him. This sentence made Yiqing Luo stunned for a moment. Naturally, she understood. Madame Huang Xi was trying to help her. However, in this way. If she met Mo Xian and brought Lin Mo Xian away, would this Devil Hall spare Madame Huang Xi? Not sure if it was Yiqing Luo's misperception. She always felt that. Ever since she entered the main hall, the eyes of the demonic hall had been on her. Madame Huang Xi pretended to be polite. When the Devil Palace was replying to Huang Sifu's words and also displaying their affection, he intentionally took a glance at her. Although his gaze was very indifferent. But he could also see that there was a hint of provocation. Yiqing Luo? Was it an illusion? Why did she feel that there were so many people deliberately targeting her in the demonic domain? That Jiang Shuang'er was. This demon hall was the same. Was it an illusion? Or, this demonic hall had already recognized her identity? Impossible. She was still in disguise as Mu Yu. Although Ji Wuhua, that fellow, looked a little unreliable. But there was absolutely no problem with his disguise. As long as she didn't use Ji Wuhua's medicine and removed the disguise. At least for half a year's time, she would be able to wear this dainty, girl-next-door face and not be discovered by anyone. Chapter 5082. She wasn't acquainted with the demonic palace. How could the demonic palace possibly detect her identity? But, the demonic palace provoked her and even intentionally flaunted their love. What was going on? Could it be? She wanted to snatch the bride. And it was spread to the ears of the demonic palace by the people in Madame's residence? Yiqing Luo felt that there was a high possibility of this. Then now, Madame Huang Xi mentioned to introduce her to the Overlord. Perhaps, it had already made the demonic palace suspicious of her. To tell the truth, when she saw the demonic palace flaunting her hairpin, Yiqing Luo's heart wasn't affected at all. Her Xian would never make hairpins or accessories for other women. She was certain of this. Moreover, her Xian was such a perfect man. There was no flaw in anything he made. Ha! This baby would not get angry over such a small matter. I'm so sorry, Madame Huang Xi. The demonic palace slowly placed her hand in front of her as she gave a cold and noble smile. The Overlord is busy with the wedding with me these few days and doesn't have time to meet guests. She paused for a moment as that pair of clear beautiful eyes casually swept past Yiqing Luo and said, "Tomorrow, Madame will still be able to meet you." Madame Huang Xi only gave a regretful smile. That's right, tomorrow is the marriage ceremony between the demonic palace and the Overlord. At that time, I'll have to trouble the demonic palace to introduce you. Of course. The demonic palace smiled lightly. Madame Huang Xi's motive had not been achieved and she was about to bring Yiqing Luo away. The demonic palace's voice suddenly rang, "This young lady. Who is she? Why have I not seen her around, madam?" The demonic palace's gaze shifted onto Yiqing Luo as his eyes were filled with probing and judgmental, as well as some arrogance. Madame Huang Xi's words were stuck in her throat. She took a look at Yiqing Luo and hurriedly said, "This is my accompanying doctor." She gave an ashamed smile, "My health is deteriorating day by day. Now even when I travel, I have to bring this doctor along. I've let the demonic palace laugh at me. Madame's doctor is really young." The demonic palace gave a profound smile, but since Madam has given her all for the Demon Phoenix continent, you should consider your own health." Madam Huang Xi nodded her head. "Thank you for your concern, Lord Devil Hall." The Devil Palace's vision was still on Yiqing Luo, not shifting away at all. The atmosphere was somewhat stiff. After a long time, it was so long that Madam Huang Xi was already thinking of an excuse to leave. The demonic hall finally spoke. "Recently, this demonic hall has been busy with the wedding, and my body isn't feeling well. Why don't—" Her red lips curled up and she spoke in a mysterious tone. "Madam, are you willing to part with your treasure and lend this young doctor to me for a day?" As soon as he said that, the three people in the room all stared at the Devil Hall in astonishment. Madam Huang Xi's expression froze for a moment, but very quickly, she regained her elegant and noble smile. "Lord Devil Hall, this," before he could finish. The indolent and cold woman snorted. She stood up slowly. She was wearing a long black dress with crow feathers, like black smoke fluttering in the wind. It made her look even more mysterious and enchanting. This demonic palace is just joking. Why is Madam's reaction so huge? The demonic palace covered her mouth as she laughed lightly. A pair of cold beautiful eyes were flowing with a faint cold glint. "Madam really treasures this doctor." Madam Huang Xi's expression didn't have much change as she calmly met the demonic palace's gaze. "Seventh Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love." "Seventh Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love." Chapter 5083. Lord Devil Hall must be joking. Madam Huang Xi pulled Yiqing Luo's hand. "I just can't leave Dr. Mu. The minute I heard that Lord Devil is going to leave Dr. Mu, I started to panic." She smiled faintly as if she was relieved. "Fortunately, Lord Devil Hall is only joking. Otherwise, I really don't know how to reject Lord Devil Hall." Madam Huang Xi's tone was filled with intimacy. It seemed to have shortened the distance between them. But between the two sides, there was a smile that didn't reach their eyes. This time, the Demon Hall did not obstruct them at all. He allowed Madam Huang Xi to pull Yiqing Luo and the three of them left together. The servants were still waiting at the door. He only left after sending the three of them to Madam Huang Xi's courtyard. He returned to his room. Madam Huang Xi's expression turned cold. Her delicate brows furrowed slightly. "Miss Mu, Lord Demon Palace, does she know you?" It seemed like it wasn't just her imagination. That Devil Hall, it really seemed like he was targeting her. Yiqing Luo shook her head. "I can't be sure, but what I can be sure of is, I don't know her." Madam Huang Xi sat down. Her expression was solemn. "In the days in Devil Head City, you have to be more careful. Lord Devil Hall seems to have a different kind of enmity towards you." She lowered her eyebrows slightly. "I thought she already knew that you wanted to kidnap her at her wedding ceremony, but she didn't do anything. Tomorrow was the wedding ceremony. If the Lord Devil Hall really knew of Yiqing Luo's motive, how could he possibly allow Yiqing Luo to be safe and sound? Unless, that Devil Hall had already made other preparations." "Madam, don't worry." Yiqing Luo's lips curled upward slightly as her long and narrow eyes were filled with warmth. "I will be careful, you don't need to worry for me." Madam Huang Xi sighed softly as she looked at Yiqing Luo, hesitating to speak. Yiqing Luo's eyes softened as she chuckled. "You want to ask me what's the relationship between me and the Overlord, right?" Madam Huang Xi hesitated for a moment before nodding her head. Although they had not known each other for long, but Madam Huang Xi still believed in her own judgment. She still believed in Yiqing Luo. Such a proud girl had come all the way to Devil Head City just for His Majesty. She also had someone she loved deeply. Naturally, he could tell. When Muyu mentioned Di Zun, that pair of enchanting eyes blossomed with light. It couldn't be faked. But, today, after meeting the Demon Hall, Madame Huang Xi was still a little worried. What she was worried about was not whether Mu Yu and the Overlord had that kind of relationship. Instead, she was afraid that Mu Yu had been deceived by His Majesty. If the marriage between the Di Zun and the Devil Hall Lord was true, Di Zun also sincerely wanted to marry Lord Devil Palace Lord. Then Twilight Rain appeared at this time. It would only bring about a fatal disaster. Madame Huang Xi wanted to tell Yiqing Luo her guess. But he didn't know how to say it. However, the girl had already curled up the corners of her lips, and her eyes were filled with a smile. There was an unwavering brilliance in her eyes. I have never doubted Xian. Because there was no doubt. There was no need to discuss whether to believe in Dmo Xian. She smiled. Tomorrow. You will understand the ins and outs of the matter. Madame Huang Xi sighed softly. As long as you have an idea in your heart, you should take note of this. I feel that Lord Devil Palace Lord has an inexplicable enmity towards you, so I'm afraid he won't take it lying down. Seventh young miss who likes trash, Lord Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh young miss who likes trash, Lord Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 50-84. Yiqing Luo pacified him. I'm in the Demon Hall Castle. If anything happens, it's her responsibility. My current identity is that of your personal doctor, the kind that can't leave me. If anything happens to me in her territory, it's her problem. What's more, tomorrow is her wedding ceremony. If she wasn't stupid, she wouldn't have done such a thing at this critical juncture. That was the analysis. But the reality was, that Devil Hall wasn't someone who acted according to common sense. That night, the other party came to stir up trouble. Moreover, he did it in an above-board way. At night, Yiqing Luo had just laid down for less than 30 minutes. With his sharp senses, he heard a sound coming from outside the door. The sound was very faint. Yiqing Luo's brows rose slightly as she quietly flipped herself up. Under the dim light of the luminous pearl, elongated shadows were cast outside the door. There were at least a dozen of them. Io, what is he trying to do? Yiqing Luo didn't believe that those who dared to take action in Demonic Hall Castle didn't have that Lord Demonic Hall's approval. Therefore, these people were specially sent by the Lord of the Demonic Hall to find her? Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes squinted slightly as her pink lips curled slightly, revealing a cold arc which seemed to be ridiculing. Then, he stretched his body. The secret technique of teleportation, she had already gone straight from her room to the room on the first floor. It was Madame Huang Xi's room. There was no sound in the room. Given Madame Huang Xi's strength, she went to her room. No matter what, he should have discovered her existence. But Madame Huang Xi did not seem to have much of a reaction. Yiqing Luo's heart sank slightly as she took quick steps towards Madame Huang Xi's direction. With the help of the faint light projected from the outside, Yiqing Luo saw Madame Huang Xi's eyes tightly shut, as though she had fallen into a deep sleep. Even if she was near, Madame Huang Xi had no reaction at all. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand and checked Madame Huang Xi's pulse. As expected, Madame Huang Xi had fainted after being drugged. Madame Huang Xi was unconscious and Hai Yun was probably the same. Looks like, this was indeed the work of that demon hall. It really was a black lotus that was different from other white lotuses. He just didn't play by the rules. Upstairs, a few light footsteps were heard but Yiqing Luo could hear it clearly. Then, the footsteps became chaotic. He's not here. Quick, find him. Then, those people started to search around the room. Obviously, everyone in the courtyard had fallen into a deep sleep. Otherwise, those people wouldn't have dared to run around the courtyard so brazenly. Yiqing Luo scoffed. The demon palace only made them fall asleep. This meant that he did not intend to take Madame Huang Xi and the rest's lives. The footsteps gradually approached Madame Huang Xi's room. Yiqing Luo speedily took out a pill and stuffed it into Madame Huang Xi's mouth. Then, he used a teleportation secret technique and quickly left the courtyard. She left very quickly. He didn't find anything. The woman, who had fallen into a deep slumber, slowly opened her eyes after the pill entered her throat. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw an afterimage flash past his eyes. A familiar aura made her completely stunned. His brain, which had been knocked out by external forces, was still a little muddled. But Madame Huang Xi endured the discomfort and sat up. Her vision looked towards the direction where Yiqing Luo had disappeared. She didn't sense wrongly. It was the aura of the teleportation secret technique. It was the teleportation secret technique. Trash 7th Young Mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th Young Mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5085. This place. Why was there a blink movement secret arts presence? Madame Huang Xi suppressed the dizziness in her head and was about to flip over. She heard messy footsteps outside the door and a voice which wasn't suppressed intentionally. Madame's room is the only one left to search, let's go in and take a look. Search? Search for what? Huang Xi's brows creased slightly as her action of flipping over stopped. She then laid back down and closed her eyes. Very quickly, a group of people rushed into the room and walked around without any scruples, as though they were searching for something. After ascertaining that there was no one else in the room, another swarm of people left the room. Huang Xi wasn't a fool. She was connecting her muddled brain with those people's actions earlier. She had more or less guessed something. She silently released her perception until she was sure that the entire courtyard had quietened down. She then slowly opened her eyes. That group of people dared to barge into her courtyard without any scruples. They must be from the demonic hall. What did they want to search for? Huang Xi pressed her slightly dizzy head as she propped herself up and headed towards Yiqing Luo's room on the second floor. On seeing that there was no one in the room, recalling the attitude of the demonic hall lord towards Yiqing Luo during the day, her expression congealed as she immediately disappeared into the darkness. The main hall of the demonic hall's castle. A lady dressed in a crow feather black dress leaned lazily on the huge obsidian throne, her posture indolent as there wasn't any emotion in her eyes. Her red lips curled into a confident and arrogant sneer, as though she had long controlled everything in the palm of her hands. When Yiqing Luo neared the main hall, she saw such a scene. She hid in the shadows, concealing her presence very well. Suddenly, a bell-like laughter reverberated in the hall. Overlord, do you really bear to hand her over to me? When she heard the two words, Overlord, Yiqing Luo's heart jumped. Overlord? Ah, Xian was here too? Then, who was the she that the demonic hall was referring to? That laughter wrapped around Yiqing Luo in strands. After a while, in the cold and spacious hall, a familiar voice with a tinge of indifference and coldness rang out, drowning out the woman's laughter. If I can't bear to, what will you do? Yiqing Luo's heart thumped hard. It was Ah Xian's voice. It was definitely Ah Xian's voice. Is he really here? Moreover, he was together with the Devil Hall? In the middle of the night, a man and a woman. Was he getting bolder? Yiqing Luo's little fists clenched tightly, restraining the urge to rush out. The demon sovereign laughed charmingly. Dizun is really heartless. If you can't bear to do it, I will be jealous. She laughed and laughed, drawing out the last syllable. Soon after, he suddenly paused, and his voice seemed to be wrapped in a layer of frost. When this prince gets jealous, someone will pay the price. Ha! That cold and thin voice snorted. Then, he indifferently spat out 2 words, "Up to you." Soon after, a gust of wind blew past. "Tsk, what a boring man, but I love him so much." She sighed softly. Yiqing Luo stood silently in the dark, as her expression faintly revealed some treacherous emotions. That voice, it was indeed Ah Xian's. No matter if it was the voice or intonation, or the way he spoke. Indeed, it was Ah Xian. But, she didn't believe it. She understood the meaning behind the Devil Hall's words. The "she" in the Devil Hall's words was probably referring to her. If it was really Ah Xian, why would Ah Xian say the words, "Up to you," allowing the Devil Hall to do anything to her? Trash 7th Young Mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th Young Mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5086. After experiencing several fake Ah Xian incidents, plus Yiqing Luo's absolute trust towards Dmo Xian. Although Yiqing Luo felt a little upset in her heart. But there was more suspicion than anger. Yiqing Luo wasn't sure what this demonic palace was trying to do. To make a move on a distinguished guest who came to attend the wedding ceremony on their own turf. If this got out of hand, then the wedding would be hard to arrange. She was pondering over it. Suddenly footsteps were heard outside the door. Following that, a group of people hurriedly ran over. "Lord Demonic Palace, there's no sign of that young lady in the room. I've searched the entire courtyard but there's no trace of that young lady." Demonic Palace's exquisite brows rose as she gave a cold smile. "She's rather quick-witted to be able to guess my plan." Yiqing Luo. No, she couldn't guess it. It was just that her physique was special and couldn't be bewitched. Plus her senses had always been sharp. Especially with the blink movement secret arts. So she barely avoided Demonic Palace's plan. She really didn't expect that Demonic Palace dared to make a move on her own turf. But this also showed one point. In Demonic Palace's eyes, she actually didn't care about the other 3 continents' authoritative figures. Or rather, her ambition was no longer just the so-called Lord Demonic Palace. In the Devil region, the 3 continents each had their own authoritative figures. For example, Demon Phoenix Continent's Madame Huang Xi. And Demonic Palace was the overall authoritative figure of the 3 continents. Their motive was to restrain the balance of the 3 continents. This Demonic Palace didn't seem to be worried that Madame Huang Xi would find trouble with her. So what if she ran away? As long as she's still in Devil Head City, she won't be able to escape from my grasp. Demonic Palace gave a charming smile as her tone turned cold. "On account that tomorrow is my wedding day, I'll be merciful and let her off." Demonic Palace paused as the glint in her eyes deepened as her red lips curled into an evil cold arc. "Speaking of this, rather than killing her now, why not let her witness with her own eyes the marriage between me and the Overlord?" That scene should be more exciting. As though she had already imagined this scene in her mind. The Demon Queen laughed loudly. Her crow-feathered black dress fluttered with her laughter like ripples, making her look even colder and more elegant like a plum blossom. "All of you can leave." She gave the order. A group of men and horses quickly disappeared into the darkness. The Devil Palace slowly stood up. Her dress fluttered in the wind like black butterfly wings, dreamy and beautiful. Yiqing Luo stayed in the dark. They stayed there for a long time. Even if the demonic hall had already left for half an hour. She did not move either. In his mind, the scene of the conversation between the demon hall and that familiar and cold voice suddenly appeared. It was a voice that was so familiar that it penetrated deep into his bones. It was so familiar that she couldn't tell whether it was fake or not. The words of the demon hall had already made it very clear. She knew who she was. He knew about her relationship with Dmo Xian. That was why they were targeting her. However, how did the Devil Hall know about this? She was currently using the identity of Twilight Rain. Everything related to Yi Qing Luo had been sealed. Today, even Old Man Tsang and her war pet, as well as the vast water god weapon etc., were all unusable. And to such a stage. How could the Devil Hall recognize her? Most importantly, she and this so-called Devil Hall were totally not familiar with each other. How did the Devil Hall know about her relationship with Dmo Xian? Or did they know about her identity? This question could only wait till tomorrow's wedding ceremony to find out the answer. 7th Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. 7th Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5087. It was totally unrealistic to search for Dmo Xian in the demonic palace castle now. Not to mention that she wasn't familiar with the layout of the demonic palace castle. Even if she was, there was no way she could roam around the demonic palace castle. Tomorrow, she would always be able to see Dmo Xian at the wedding ceremony. By then, she would know the reason. Yi Qing Luo squinted her long and narrow eyes as she displayed her blink movement secret art and disappeared from the castle's main hall. She had just returned to Madame Huang Xi's courtyard. She just stepped in. Her wrist tightened. In the darkness, Madame Huang Xi's hand grabbed her arm tightly. Are you all right? Her eyes were filled with worry as she sized Yi Qing Luo up. You're awake. Yi Qing Luo smiled at her and pulled her back into the house. I'm fine, don't worry. What happened? Madame Huang Xi frowned, her expression was extremely ugly. After the both of them sat on the chair, Yi Qing Luo took Madame Huang Xi's pulse as she replied, that demonic palace indeed knows the reason why I came to Devil Head City. Madame Huang Xi's pulse was very stable. The things that demonic palace planted didn't have much of an effect on Madame Huang Xi. Yi Qing Luo was relieved. Based on Madame Huang Xi's current body, she really couldn't take on other kinds of poison. Madame Huang Xi allowed Yi Qing Luo to take her pulse as her thoughts were fixed on Yi Qing Luo's words. Her expression suddenly sunk, then. Demonic palace wants to capture you? In case you spoil her wedding? Initially, he might have thought so. Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers propped up her chin as her slightly curved eyes were filled with a cold glint, but not necessarily. That demonic palace wasn't someone who acted according to common sense. Demonic palace's target was her. It might not be because he was worried that she would spoil the wedding. Or possibly, he wanted to torture her. Why not you go and hide first? When I see the Overlord, I'll help you pass on a message. Madame Huang Xi revealed a worried expression. That demonic palace's way of doing things. Extremely unreasonable. No one could guess what she was thinking. If demonic palace set his eyes on Evening Rain, then. If Twilight Rain continued to stay in the Demon Hall Castle, it would instead attract a fatal disaster. Yi Qing Luo held Madame Huang Xi's hand gently as her long and narrow eyes were filled with a cold glint. I came to Devil Head City to wreck the wedding ceremony's venue, how could I possibly dodge? She softened her expression and smiled again. Moreover, in the eyes of the Devil Hall, we are in the same group. Do you think, if I hide, she will give you the chance to meet the sovereign alone? Moreover, it was still uncertain whether that person was a venerable sovereign. Yi Qing Luo didn't believe it. Her Xian would appear at the wedding ceremony of another woman. He looked at Madame Huang Xi's worried face. Yi Qing Luo comforted him, don't worry, I know how to protect myself. Seeing her insistence, Madame Huang Xi could only sigh lightly, don't force yourself. Yi Qing Luo smiled and brought the topic back to the matter which she was suspicious of previously. The Devil Hall actually dared to act against her, the person protected by Madame Huang Xi, in the Devil Hall Castle. He even poisoned Madame Huang Xi, causing her to fall into a deep sleep. This action. It was totally provoking the Devil Phoenix continent. Madame Huang Xi's eyelids drooped slightly. That exquisite face was covered with a layer of faint melancholy. She pursed her lips slightly and sighed softly, actually. There were signs of this long ago. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5088. As the lord of a continent, no matter how unwell she would still be in control of most matters in the Devil region. A leader would absolutely not allow anything to be out of her control. Initially, the Devil region's 3 continents were in balance. Devil Head City was located in the center of the 3 continents, with Devil Hall as the leader. This was considered stable. But no one knew when it started. Over at Devil Hall's side, there were some changes. Unknowingly, all the powerhouses in the 3 continents were leaning towards Devil Hall. The powers of the 3 continents were well aware of this, but they couldn't point it out, so they could only investigate and counterattack in the dark. Following that, Devil Hall directly took away part of the authority in their hands. All the way till now. Huang Sifu's drooping brows were cold and gloomy. I always feel that this marriage ceremony is not a simple marriage. Yi Qing Luo agreed with this point. Devil Hall's actions tonight. They totally didn't consider if it would affect her marriage tomorrow. Even if Devil Hall's status was above the 3 continents' powers. But if Madame Huang Xi were to create a ruckus because of her being caught. No matter what, it would affect the marriage ceremony. Moreover, earlier. In Devil Hall's main hall. Devil Hall An. DMO Xian's conversation. Yi Qing Luo didn't feel that Devil Hall liked DMO Xian at all. This matter. There must be a problem. Rest early, tomorrow we will know. What is that Devil Hall planning? Yi Qing Luo patted Huang Xifu's shoulder. Rest enough before you have the energy. The next day. It was still not daybreak. The entire Devil Head City was a scene of jubilation. This liveliness continued till morning. Yi Qing Luo and Madame Huang Xi had their meal and were led by Devil Hall's attendants to the wedding ceremony venue. Along the way, Devil Hall's surroundings were totally different from when they came. Devil Hall's castle was decorated with lanterns and streamers, red silk hung everywhere. Big red double happiness words were pasted on every wall and door. Yi Qing Luo and the rest followed the attendant out of Devil Hall's castle, and under the attendant's instructions, they boarded a magic ship. On top of the magic ship, there were already 5 to 6 people who were of high status and authority. When they saw Madame Huang Xi, they all stood up to greet her. Madame Huang Xi politely returned the greeting. Then, after exchanging a few pleasantries, they each took their own seats. The Demon Palace had set the wedding to be held at the largest square in Devil Head City. Under the recent management of the square. It was grand and luxurious, fully displaying the style of the Devil Hall. Countless citizens of the demon domain had gathered around and were watching with their heads raised. Their words were filled with joy for the marriage of the Demon Hall. They were even discussing the love story between the sovereign and the Demon Palace. His imagination was so good that he could write a 5-million-word novel. After the demonic ship arrived, beautiful maids came forward and led the people on the demonic ship to their seats. Yi Qing Luo had been looking around the entire way. The people of the infernal region looked no different from humans. The only difference was, regardless of whether they were men or women, young or old, they all wore thick eyeliner and had 4 sharp teeth in their mouths. Madame Huang Xi was the ruler of a continent. His position was naturally very close to the front. It was the 2nd row away from Xinrao. After Yi Qing Luo sat down, she sized up the people around her. Numerous strong practitioners from the infernal region were all invited over, as their faces were filled with smiles as they chatted with the people around them. Madame Huang Xi could roughly tell that Yiqing Luo didn't know much about the matters of the infernal region. Chapter 50-89. Occasionally he would lower his voice to explain to her the surrounding identities. The two of them were whispering something. The seat beside Yiqing Luo was occupied by someone. Yiqing Luo subconsciously looked over. He saw a man in a moon-white robe leaning lazily against the back of the chair in the distance of a pedestrian passageway. What made Yiqing Luo astonished was that man's hair was silver in color. It was obviously the symbol of the purest white robe and white hair man, but he had a captivating face. That face was extraordinarily handsome, bewitching and bewitching. Especially that pair of long and narrow, curved phoenix eyes, which carried a charm. When it was slightly raised, it hooked into a wavy arc. Unfortunately, such an evildoer's temperament, under the white robe and white hair, was totally compatible. Good looks really could handle any style. Every table here represented a powerhouse. Every table's fingertip was separated by a distance of a pedestrian walkway. Perhaps it was because Yiqing Luo's gaze was too scorching, without any concealment. That lazy and contented man suddenly raised his eyes, meeting Yiqing Luo's gaze, as he looked over. Just like that, their eyes met. Yiqing Luo could feel her own heart constricting for a moment. He really was an evildoer. This face, this temperament. If it was any other lady, they would probably drown under his charm. The man was apparently curious. After their eyes met, the young lady actually continued to look at him without any change in expression. And there wasn't any shyness or any ripples in her emotions. The man's brows rose slightly, as he sized up the young lady with interest. Dr. Mu. Madame Huang Xi tugged Yiqing Luo's hand hard. Yiqing Luo's gaze shifted away, as she looked towards Madame Huang Xi. Huang Xifu's expression wasn't too good, as he suppressed his voice, that is Devil Wing's countenance King Jiu. She looked at the man's gaze towards Yiqing Luo, as her expression sunk, as she continued, I heard that he hates women, especially women, staring at his looks. There are rumors outside, that he might be a... Madame Huang Xi raised her arm, as she pulled down her wide sleeves. Cut off the sleeve. Yiqing Luo raised her brows and glanced sideways at the man with interest, which was in the direction of Wing King Jiu. Then, she retracted her gaze. TSK, such a good-looking man but he's gay, what a pity. Yiqing Luo whispered. Suddenly, a low and flirtatious voice came from behind him, like a peach blossom caressing his face, You, keep staring at this prince, what is your intention? It was unknown when Jiu had walked to Yiqing Luo's side. A clear and serene male scent of green bamboo seeped into his nose. Yiqing Luo had just turned back. She was met with an enlarged version of a handsome face that was right in front of her. Wing 9 bent down and looked down at the girl in front of him. Her face had the facial features of a cute girl next door. She could barely be considered elegant and pleasant. But, those eyes. It made people want to look into the abyss in her eyes and sink into it. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as she looked at this close proximity, that charming face, as she opened her mouth, Can you stay further away from me? This distance, wasn't it a little too close? There were already quite a number of strong practitioners from the devil's domain looking over. Where was the disgusting woman? What was he doing standing so close to her? King E. When Madame Huang Xi saw this, she immediately stood up and called out. Chapter 50-90. She raised her hand and used her wide sleeves to block Yiqing Luo's and Yi Wang's eyes. Yi Wang then shifted his gaze away. Madame Huang Xi's face sunk, Yi Wang, this is Dr. Rao. Yi Wang straightened his body lazily and sat down on the chair next to Yiqing Luo naturally. I didn't do anything, why is Madame so agitated? Huang Xiaifu replied indifferently, Yi Wang's seat is not here. I and Madam haven't met for a long time, Madam can bear to chase me away. Yi Wang casually glanced at Madam Huang Xi and poured himself a cup of tea. Anyway, I came here alone, why don't I have a companion? Huang Xiaifu's face turned gloomy. She frowned, Yi Wang, Dr. Mu only took a few more glances at you because you are too good-looking. She is my Dr. Rao, if Yi Wang is angry, feel free to come to me. Yi Wang didn't seem to hear the impatience and coldness in Madam Huang Xi's words. Instead, his long and narrow phoenix eyes curved into an arc as he turned to Yi Qing Luo and asked with a smile, Miss Mu really think I am handsome? Huang Xiaifu's face turned black. Yi Qing Luo blinked her eyes. Looking at Yi Wang's smiling face, which looked even more like a beauty that could bring calamity to the country. She blinked her eyes again. This was a dead question. Based on Madame Huang Xi's image of Yi Wang. He hated other women to look at him. Maybe he felt that his face was a burden. So he couldn't admit it. But if he denied it, it would probably annoy Yi Wang. Yi Qing Luo expressed that this question was hard to answer. So she asked back, then Yi Wang think. You look good? Good. Yi Wang didn't hesitate as his slender fingers touched his chin and the ends of his eyes lifted. Yi Qing Luo felt that he was purposely exuding his male hormones. This Yi Wang was probably a stuffy horse flea. Yi Qing Luo smiled and smiled again, good looking. The King of Wings tilted his head, and his long silver hair cascaded down his shoulders. However, I feel that your answer is completely insincere, as if you are just brushing me off. Yi Qing Luo. So she thought, this was a suicide question. Yi King. Madame Huang Xi frowned. Madam is fine. Yi Qing Luo held on to Madame Huang Xi, curled her lips and shook her head. Up until now, she had not sensed any malicious intent from the Wing King. According to her analysis, this was probably the first time Yi Wang had met a young lady like her. After seeing his beautiful face, she was still able to remain clear-headed under his seductive charm. Therefore, he was a little interested. Yi Qing Luo expressed, what kind of peerless beauty had she not seen before? She had already devoured all the top beauties in the world, including her Xian. No matter how beautiful Yi Wang was, Wang couldn't do anything about it. Her heart wasn't moved at all, okay? And there was movement over here. Many of the guests around them were shocked. Those who could attend the wedding ceremony were either rich or noble. Who didn't know that the Devil Wing Continent's King Yi was a person who detested women? But now, the Devil Wing Continent's King Yi was actually sitting on Huang Xiaifu Rao's seat, and was even chatting cheerfully with a young lady? And they were so close. Could it be? The Devil Wing Continent and the Devil Phoenix Continent were going to unite by marriage? This thought instantly caused an uproar among the guests. All of them expressed their disbelief. Chapter 5091. He listened to the millions of words that the people around him once again filled in the gaps in their minds. Yi Qing Luo was speechless. She didn't expect these people from the Devil region to have such a strong imagination. But Yi Qing Luo didn't reject Yi Wang sitting beside her. He chatted back and forth with the King of Wings. On the other hand, Madame Huang Xi's eyes were filled with worry and vigilance as she stared at Yi Wang. There were more and more guests around. The scene of the wedding ceremony was getting more and more lively. King Yi's eyes were filled with interest as he stared at Yi Qing Luo, the corners of his eyes raised as he smiled. The first time this duke saw Miss Mu, I was already filled with joy. I wonder if Miss Mu is willing to follow this duke back to the Devil Wings continent, to be this duke's princess? Yi Qing Luo. Madame Huang Xi was drinking tea when her hand shook and the teacup fell onto the rain. Yi Wang's words had shocked the both of them. On the contrary, Yi Wang didn't feel that his words had much influence on them. He was still smiling as he deliberately exuded his charm. "What do you think, Miss Mu?" Yi Qingluo placed the teacup on the table and fixed her gaze on Yi Wang. Yi Wang allowed her to size him up. Yi Qingluo stared for a while and was extremely calm. "You like me?" Yi Wang leaned forward slightly and closed the distance between him and Yi Qingluo. His long and narrow phoenix eyes curved into crescents as he smiled. "I find you very interesting." "I just find it interesting, not to the extent of liking. On what basis do you want to marry me?" Yi Qingluo rejected him directly. "After you find me boring, won't you abandon me?" "Ha ha ha." Yi Wang laughed softly as his silver hair swayed in front of his chest. "Miss Mu is indeed straightforward, making me fall in love with you." Yi Qingluo was expressionless. "I forgot to tell Yi Wang something." "Huh?" Yi Wang raised his brows with interest. Yi Qingluo smiled slightly. "I am already married." Yi Wang's eyes widened slightly as he was somewhat surprised. But immediately after, he laughed in a low voice. "So what?" He casually picked up the teapot and filled the young lady's teacup before bringing the tea to Yi Qingluo's lips. That green bamboo-like fragrance assaulted her senses. He approached her and chuckled. "Even if we are married, if this king likes you, you can only be this king's." As he spoke, he handed the teacup over. Yi Qingluo was about to raise her hand to block Yi Wang. However, he felt a chill run down his spine. It was just a short pause. The teacup in Yi Wang's hand was already at her lips. Yi Qingluo raised her hand and held the teacup as she looked towards the direction of that chilling intent. The seats were full of guests, but she didn't see that familiar yet bone-chilling aura. She didn't know where it came from. That chill. Someone must be watching her. "Wing King, please behave yourself." Madame Huang Xi waved her hand and separated the distance between Yi Qingluo and Yi Wang, then pulled her behind her. "No matter what motive you have, Dr. Mu is not someone you can play with." The corners of King Yi's lips curled upwards. She lowered her gaze and focused on her own hand. That was the hand that the girl had grabbed just now. She snatched the cup from his hand and let go of him. However, he still felt that the touch of her hand was still faintly lingering. Yi Wang lifted his eyes slightly. His narrow phoenix eyes revealed some unknown glint. He looked at Madame Huang Xi and smiled faintly. "Perhaps, this king does not intend to play with her? Then I will still reject." This sentence was Yi Qingluo's reply. Chapter 5092. While smashing, 5, the title is wrong. Yi Qingluo placed the teacup on the table. "I am already married and I love my husband very much, so it's not your turn to please me." Wing 9, who had been completely rejected, smiled even more brightly. He shifted his body and slumped back onto the chair as his gaze casually looked towards Yi Qingluo's direction, squinting in that direction, and with an unclear meaning, his thin lips curled upwards. "I didn't expect Miss Mu to have so many pursuers." Yi Qingluo? What did he mean? Yi Jiao didn't have the intention to explain to her as he sat by the side and poured himself a cup of tea. Then he stared ahead at the stage where the newlyweds were going to bow to heaven and earth. It wasn't the auspicious hour yet. The two newlyweds hadn't come out yet. Yi Qingluo didn't talk to Yi Jiao anymore. Madame Huang Xi held Yi Qingluo's hand and asked in a low voice, "You are really married?" Yi Qingluo smiled and nodded. Madame Huang Xi looked towards the stage and coughed lightly. "Could it be the Overlord?" Yi Qingluo raised her brows and smiled mysteriously. "This? I'm not sure. Maybe her husband was really the groom today. Or maybe not." Madame Huang Xi was stunned. Yes means yes, no means no. What did she mean by not sure? She couldn't even say for sure who her husband was. Madame Huang Xi felt that the marriage mentioned by Mu Yu was just an excuse to reject Yi Jiu. As she spoke, the festive gongs and drums sounded. Accompanied by the wedding matron's joyous voice, "The auspicious hour has arrived, may the bride and groom please come to the stage." At that moment, the entire wedding ceremony was filled with deafening applause and congratulations. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. Then she raised her eyes and followed the gaze of these people to the flower carpet that extended to the door. Dr. Mu. Madame Huang Xi held Yi Qing Luo's hand tightly and whispered worriedly. Worried that she wouldn't be able to bear it. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled but didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on the door without blinking. Two figures slowly appeared and stepped onto the carpet of flowers on the ground. The woman wore a phoenix crown and red robe, and her face was as red as fire. The man was dressed in a bright red wedding robe and was extraordinarily handsome. When the two of them appeared in front of everyone, thunderous applause erupted from the crowd. Tight and loose, the petals spread. The bride and groom held a red ribbon in their hands and walked step by step towards the stage. Everywhere he went, there were words of congratulations. Yi Qing Luo's vision congealed on that pair of newlyweds, not even blinking once, not even blinking once. The man was handsome and elegant, but his face was expressionless at this moment. There was not the slightest bit of joy on his face. That face. Even if Yi Qing Luo closed her eyes, she could still accurately recognize him. She was so familiar with the man in her bones. Dmo Xian. Yi Qing Luo looked on expressionlessly, looking. There was not the slightest change in his expression or any change in his emotions. But Madame Huang Xi, who was holding hands with her, could clearly feel the strength of the young lady's clenched fists. Her heart ached. But at this time, he couldn't open his mouth to comfort her. She could only let the young girl hold her hand, giving the girl the only warmth. The bride and groom walked past them. They were very close to each other. The moment the newcomer passed by, the groom's vision brushed past Yi Qing Luo. Obviously, his footsteps paused. His four eyes met with Yi Qing Luo's. That pair of deep and serene eyes seemed to be surging with raging waves. Beside him, the bride tugged at the red ribbon and said something in a low voice. The groom shifted his vision away and walked forward expressionlessly. "Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love." "Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love." Yi Qing Luo laughed softly. Yi Wang's idea sounds pretty good. That's right, so. What's Miss Mu's answer? Yi Wang suddenly straightened his body as that handsome face leaned towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Between her brows, there was a devilish charm. "Unfortunately, I'm not interested in you, Yi Wang." The young lady spat out her words indifferently as she rejected him in a straightforward manner. "What's more, I have nothing to do with today's groom. Yi Wang, don't ruin my reputation, in case the Lord Devil Hall comes looking for me to settle the score." Yi Wang gave a faint "oh," as he replied with a smile that didn't look like a smile. "Nothing to do with you? But I feel that your relationship is not shallow." Chapter 50-94. What you think is your problem, it has nothing to do with me. Yi Qing Luo's smile faded as she raised her slender hand and pushed him back to his seat. Following that, she shifted her vision towards the center of the stage. The newlyweds were standing there, going through all kinds of wedding procedures. Looking at the groom, holding the red silk and bowing to the wedding matron's joyous voice. Yi Qing Luo expressed, there was no fluctuation in her heart, she even felt like laughing. That groom was indeed Dmo Xian's face. His every action was filled with Dmo Xian's shadow. But, it wasn't Dmo Xian. Yi Qing Luo didn't know how to describe this feeling. Anyway, it was just the first look and she was already certain, he wasn't a Xian. Even if this groom looked like Dmo Xian. Even if he revealed an expression when he saw her. She was certain, this person was absolutely not Dmo Xian. Perhaps, this kind of stubborn thinking, in the eyes of outsiders, might be seen as self-deception. Yiqing Luo gave a low laugh as she lowered her eyes to look at the profound phoenix ring on her fingertips. To conceal her identity, it had covered the original glow, making it look extremely dim. There was no fluctuation in the profound phoenix ring. Her fingertips gently caressed the profound phoenix ring as her mind was filled with thoughts. If the groom in front of her wasn't Dmo Xian, then, what was the intention of the demonic palace? This was also clear, the demonic palace knew that Dmo Xian was in the devil's domain. Most importantly, earlier the groom looked at her, what did it mean? Her current identity was Sunset Rain. Yiqing Luo's mind was sketching out the development of the matter, attempting to deduce the demonic palace's motive. And the way she lowered her eyes in deep thoughts. In Huang Sifu's eyes, it meant that she was in low spirits and not in a good mood. He didn't want to disturb her, so he could only look at her with heartache. Just as she was thinking. The procedures had ended. It was time for the couple to toast. Yiqing Luo's elbow was knocked. From the side of his eyes met the bride's exquisitely made-up, cold and elegant face. Not knowing when, the demonic palace had already removed the red veil, pulling the groom to stand in front of her. The demon royal highness held a wine cup in her hand. A lazy smile appeared on her cold, picturesque eyes. Last night, didn't Madam want me to introduce you to the sovereign? I've brought Dizun here for you. Madam Huang Ci stood up and raised her wine cup. There was no smile on her face. Congratulations to Lord Demon Hall for getting married to Lord Dizun. She was about to finish the wine in one gulp. A white hand pressed down on her hand. Madam is currently recuperating and isn't suitable to drink alcohol. This cup of wine. If Sir Demon Lord doesn't mind, I'll drink it on her behalf. Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as she smiled sweetly at Demon Lord. Devil Palace's brows shot towards Yiqing Luo as that pair of beautiful eyes bore an undetectable cold intent. After that, he said, Madam, you still have to protect the Demon Phoenix continent. Your health is more important, it's fine. Yiqing Luo's fingertips flicked as she took the wine cup from Madame Huang Ci's hands. After finishing it in one gulp, she smiled, it's a marriage, as long as you're happy. Congratulations to the both of you. Devil Palace didn't have the intention to head to the next table to toast. Instead, he held on to the groom's arm. Dizun heard that a divine doctor had appeared by Madame's side and had always wanted to meet you. Although I'm not too willing to let Dizun befriend such a beautiful lady like Dr. Mu, but I can't reject Dizun's request. Chapter 5095. The bridegroom's handsome face immediately darkened a little. His black eyes, which were as deep as ink, swept across the Demon Hall coldly. As though he was warning something. As though he was suppressing his anger because of Demon Palace's words. Demon Palace's smile was even more enchanting, her cold beautiful eyes were cold. See, didn't I let you meet each other? Her words seemed to have a deeper meaning. Or as though it was because the groom wanted to befriend this divine doctor, as the bride, she unconditionally fulfilled her husband's wish. The groom held the wine glass as he stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. The raging waves in his eyes seemed to want to drown her. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. Yiqing Luo didn't seem to see his rich expression as she smiled sweetly, since Demon Palace doesn't allow it, then there's no need to get to know each other. She raised her wine glass and clinked it against the groom's glass. Anyway, I will only be by Madame's side and be her exclusive doctor. Other people's illnesses have nothing to do with me. After that, she raised her wine glass and drank it in one gulp. Her smile was flawless. Congratulations, groom. The groom looked at the wine glass in his hand as his throat rolled. That familiar low hoarse voice, indeed, it was very similar. Even that tone seemed to be replicated. But, there was only that one word. Demon Palace took a look at him. In the end, he swallowed the words that were stuck in his throat and silently drained the cup of wine. Demon Palace looked at Madame Huang Ci with envy. This doctor Madame has found is really enviable. Madame Huang Ci's lips twitched as she forced a smile. Now that Demon Palace is married to the Overlord, based on the Overlord's great ability, he will definitely not let you need a doctor. Demon Palace gave another enchanting smile. Then she held the groom's arm and went to the other tables to toast. This side finally quietened down. Looking at the young lady's calm look, Madame Huang Ci's heart ached more and more. Yi Jiu opened his mouth and said lazily, Demon Palace obviously dragged her groom to you, don't tell me. Demon Palace already knew that you are here to snatch the bride? It looks like he knows. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she smiled. Aren't you afraid that the Devil Hall would think that we're in cahoots by sitting together with me? If you become this king's consort, this king will naturally be on your side. Yi Jiu once again brought up this matter. Yi Qing Luo maintained her smile. King Yi is really persistent. Maybe if you're a little more persistent, you'll be able to win the heart of the beauty? Wing Nine's smile remained unchanged. Yi Qing Luo snorted coldly, it still lit up. Wing Nine, huh? It's not time to dream yet. Yi Qing Luo was expressionless. Yi Jiu was stunned for a moment before he laughed out loud. That smile could only be described as amorous and flirtatious. It was demonic to the extreme. When Madame Huang Ci saw the conversation between the two of them, she wanted to stop Yi Jiu but she suddenly stopped. The current sunset rain was probably feeling terrible in her heart. With Yi Wang accompanying her like this, perhaps it could divert his attention. Madame Huang Ci let out a long sigh. Suddenly, they keenly sensed that there were several pairs of eyes looking in their direction. When Madame Huang Ci looked over, she saw that although Demon Palace and the groom were toasting, their gazes were always looking in their direction. Especially when she saw Sunset Rain and Yi Wang chatting happily, she even whispered something. Chapter 5096. Madame Huang Ci's heart was suddenly in her throat. The Demon Lord and the Overlord. It seemed that the attention they paid to Evening Rain was unusual. Was it because they were worried that Evening Rain would cause trouble and kidnap the bride? Madame Huang Ci suppressed her thoughts and refocused her attention on the ceremony. It took at least an hour for the toasts to be completed. When the couple returned to the stage, they were already a little tipsy. The Demon Lord leaned on the groom's shoulder, his little hand hooked his arm, but his cold face was hooked into a smile. The groom was still expressionless, letting the Demon Lord do whatever he wanted. The matchmaker said a few more words. After that, the guests were allowed to eat and drink as they liked. Miss Mu. Yi Jiu suddenly lowered his voice and gave her a bright smile. Do you want to know, who is the person who has been staring at you from behind? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. You found him? From the moment she and Yi Jiu started talking, she kept feeling a cold gaze directed at her. That frosty gaze, but she couldn't catch it at all. Whether he was a friend or foe, she didn't know. Yi Qing Luo felt that since she came to the devil's domain, she felt that she was on the verge of losing her horse. Like everyone had a grudge against her. She also wanted to know, who was the person who had been staring at her coldly? Listening to Yi Qing Luo's inquiry, Yi Jiu shook his head with a smile. No. Yi Qing Luo. What the hell are you talking about? But, I have an idea. Yi Jiu's long and narrow phoenix eyes twitched. Do you want to try? Yi Qing Luo didn't reply. Madame Huang Ci continued, if there is an idea, why don't we try? It's better than them hiding in the dark while we are out in the open. Madame Huang Xi's action was to divert Yiqing Luo's attention, so that she wouldn't be affected by the marriage between the demon lord and the overlord. What's more, indeed, if there was someone staring at evening rain in the dark, it would be safer to put them out in the open. Egio raised his brows, his slender fingers stroked his chin. I have observed for a while, once I get close to you, that gaze will move over. So, I guess. He paused mysteriously and said, come out with me. Yiqing Luo sized him up suspiciously. What do you want to do? You are Madame's person, this duke wouldn't dare to do anything bad. Egio grabbed Yiqing Luo's wrist through her sleeves and pulled her out of the crowd. It was a boiling cauldron of voices and the seats were full of guests. Their actions did not attract the attention of too many people. However, the pair of newlyweds on the stage could see it clearly. There was a momentary change in the expression on the groom's handsome face. His deep eyes stared straight at the departing figures of Yiqing Luo and Egio. After a while, he lowered his eyes. I'm going to sober up. The demon royal hall smiled mysteriously and pretended to be considerate. Go. Madame Huang Xi's beautiful eyes were filled with worry and she wanted to catch up. But the moment he stood up, the demon hall glanced in a certain direction. Soon, people from other continents came up to chat. In the blink of an eye, Egio and Yiqing Luo's figures had already disappeared before their eyes. The entire square was contracted by the demon royal hall. Walking out of the wedding stage, the periphery was decorated with flowers like a brocade. The atmosphere was joyous, luxurious and noble. Until they walked out of the crowd, Yiqing Luo shook off Egio. Is this enough? Egio raised his brows and looked around. Chapter 5097. Everyone had gathered at the scene of the wedding ceremony to watch the ceremony. Among the flowers, there was no one else to be seen. Egio's long and narrow phoenix eyes were flowing with a few rays of bright light, extremely evil. His thin lips curled and suddenly reached out and pressed on Yiqing Luo's shoulder. Immediately, his figure leaned forward. That devilishly handsome face was magnified in Yiqing Luo's pupils. Yiqing Luo was stunned for a moment. She didn't quite understand the intention of Egio's action. But she didn't show too much panic on her face, just raised her hand to block Egio's chest, blocking him from getting close. It was also at this moment. Yiqing Luo's wrist was pulled by a huge force. With a little force, she staggered back a few steps and almost fell to the ground. Just as she was about to turn her head to look, Egio suddenly grabbed her arm hard and pulled her towards him. Yiqing Luo, each of them pulled one arm. Was this a tug of war? Your Majesty, today is your big day. You came here, and pulled my future wife. Isn't that a little inappropriate? Egio spat out a voice laced with evil laughter. He smiled with his phoenix eyes, looking behind Yiqing Luo with a faint smile. Overlord? Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows slightly. She glanced sideways, and sure enough, her eyes met that peerless face. And that pair of eyes that seemed to be full of infinite affection, as deep as ink. He held her wrist tightly, a little strong, as if he was holding back some emotions. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. Immediately, her pink lips raised into a faint smile. Groom, what do you mean? She looked down at her wrist. The groom tightly pursed his thin lips, his eyes were surging with stormy waves. He held Yiqing Luo's hand and refused to let go. Yiqing Luo tried to shake it off but failed, her expression turned solemn. Bridegroom, please conduct yourself with dignity. You, listen to my explanation. He spoke in a low and hoarse voice, word by word, with difficulty. Yiqing Luo's brows creased even tighter as a trace of puzzlement and solemnity surfaced in her eyes. Bridegroom, what do you mean by this? You and I don't know each other at all. If you do this, will you be able to face the Lord of the Devil Palace? Little Luo, he called out in a low voice. That familiar voice that made one's heart tremble, calling out Dmo Xian's exclusive title. Yiqing Luo's heart was still moved. However, on the surface, he frowned even tighter. "Groom, I think you have recognized the wrong person." "How could I be mistaken?" The groom's voice was hoarse and full of pain. "Give me a chance to explain." Before he could finish, Yi Jiu's hand suddenly reached over and pushed the groom's hand away. The bridegroom's eyes immediately shot out a sharp, cold glint toward Yi Jiu. Yi Jiu casually pulled Yiqing Luo to his side as he nonchalantly pulled the corners of his lips. "Overlord, Miss Mu already said that she doesn't know you. Isn't it a little too much for you to keep pestering her? Don't forget, you're the new husband of today's wedding ceremony." Yi Jiu deliberately emphasized on the last three words. "Is it your turn to speak?" The groom's voice was deep and cold as he reached out to grab Yiqing Luo's arm again. "This lord is talking to her. What has it got to do with you? This lord said that she is this lord's future princess consort, you say. This lord has nothing to do with this lord." Yi Jiu moved forward and blocked the groom's outstretched hand. He laughed so much that he deserved a spanking. "Seventh Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love." Chapter 5098. The peerless groom's expression turned darker and gloomier. His eyes that were as cold as ink stared at Yiqing Luo. "What he said. Is it true? Whether what King Yi said is true or false has nothing to do with you." Yiqing Luo was too lazy to explain. If she explained, didn't it mean that she cared about the other party's opinion? She didn't want the other party to have such a misconception. The girl's face was cold, and there was not much emotion on her face. Even the look in her eyes did not change in the slightest. "Groom, today is your big day. You are not afraid of getting into trouble, but I don't want to get into trouble for no reason. Earlier Lord Demonic Palace had already made it very clear that she doesn't want us to have too much relationship. Earlier, I will take it that you've recognized the wrong person. Please conduct yourself with dignity." The young lady's voice was soft, but the words that came out were like a sharp blade, cutting off a deep ravine. The groom seemed to have lost all his strength. Even that pair of obsidian black eyes had lost its luster at this moment. He lowered his head and said in a low voice, "I know, you're angry because of my marriage with her, but you should believe me." He suddenly raised his head and stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. "You should believe me." "Groom, what are you talking about?" Yiqing Luo vividly acted out her confusion, helplessness, impatience and anger. "Why should I be angry because of your marriage? Why should I believe you?" She frowned. "If you've recognized the wrong person, then your actions are letting down Lord Demonic Palace." Saying that, she turned around and left. Not willing to stay for a moment. Yi Jiu raised his eyebrows and looked at the groom with some interest in his eyes. Then he chased after Yiqing Luo. The two of them had only taken a few steps. A man's mellow and hoarse voice was heard from behind, full of emotions. He said, "I'm sorry." But the person in front had no intention of stopping. Vaguely, she could hear Yi Jiu teasing, "Io, Miss Mu is not bad. I didn't expect you and the Overlord to have a past. Go over my ass. I don't even know who he is. Who knows if that bridegroom is sick in the head." The young girl's tone was full of impatience. "But I feel that he seems very sincere," Yi Jiu said. He. The young girl coldly snorted, "Pulling another woman on your wedding day, you're simply a scum among men. How sincere could such a person be?" "Bah!" The voice gradually grew distant. The expression on the man's face, which was filled with disappointment, gradually calmed down. His ink-like deep eyes stared straight in the direction where the girl had left. That peerless face was covered with a layer of dark and gloomy emotion. Until he was far away from the cluster of flowers. He was sure that the groom had not caught up. Yi Qing Luo sneered as she glanced at Yi Jiao. This is the good idea you came up with? So, the person in the dark is today's groom? Yi Jiao's face was full of seriousness. This is not my deduction wrong, but Miss Mu, you are too popular, even today's groom fell in love with you at first sight. Yi Qing Luo. If this sentence is heard by others, I'm afraid I won't be able to leave the wedding ceremony alive today. Yi Jiao's smile was bright, his extremely devilish face was handsome and evil. Once again, he approached her and smiled. This time, it won't be wrong. Trash seventh young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash seventh young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5099. Yi Qing Luo had yet to understand the meaning of Yi Jiao's words. Yi Jiao tightened his grip on her wrist. Then, he leaned towards Wing 9. Yi Qing Luo. Motherf asterisk Ker. Was he trying to take advantage of her? Yi Qing Luo gave him a backhand slap. This slap didn't even reach Wing 9's face. A majestic profound energy brushed past her and shot straight ahead. Bang! Wing 9 was sent flying. A moon-white long robe flashed past Yi Qing Luo's eyes and fell heavily on the rain. The next moment, Yi Qing Luo's wrist tightened. Suddenly, a cold sensation came into contact with him. Her whole body was pulled backwards. The familiar plum fragrance entered his nose. Yi Qing Luo was able to differentiate who the person who was pulling her was. She frowned and turned to look at the person behind her. He was dressed in a simple yet luxurious red robe, and a blood-colored jade pendant hung from his waist. It was as if there were wisps of blood rippling within the jade. His black hair was combed neatly, revealing his grave and stern face. His face was expressionless, devoid of any emotion. But that pair of serene eyes, when looking at Yi Qing Luo, revealed some gentleness. It was Zhu Wuxin. Why was he here? No matter how she felt, it didn't matter what realm she was in. He could even meet Zhu Wuxin. Most importantly, her current identity was Muyu, so how did Zhu Wuxin recognize her? Yi Qing Luo straightened her face and said with a sunken face, "Master, please let go." Her tone was calm, but there was a hint of vigilance in it. It was like meeting Zhu Wuxin for the first time. When that soft voice rang out, Zhu Wuxin frowned for a moment. However, the emotions on his face did not linger for long. It was fleeting. Yi Qing Luo struggled free from Zhu Wuxian's hand as she retreated 2 steps in alarm as her brows creased slightly. "Who are you? Why did you suddenly attack King Yi?" The unfamiliarity in her eyes caused Zhu Wuxin to frown again. The gaze he shot towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with probing. Apparently, Zhu Wuxian wasn't certain that she was Yi Qing Luo. This man was so sharp that it was scary. She had already disguised herself to this extent. He had disguised himself like this. Zhu Wuxin was actually able to recognize her. This was truly frightening. Yi Qing Luo walked step by step towards Yi Wang's direction, as she looked at Zhu Wuxian alertly. Wing 9, who was lying on the ground, supported himself with one hand and slowly straightened his body. The moon-white robe swept across the ground, staining the flower petals on the ground. That head of silver hair, sprinkled on the beautiful purple and red zheng. This added to his soul-stirring demonic charm. He stood up absent-mindedly and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his slender fingers. Tilting his head, he raised his eyes to look at Zhu Wuxin and indifferently said, "He's the pavilion master of the Red Clarity Pavilion, Zhu Wuxin, you don't know him?" These words were to explain Zhu Wuxian's identity to Yi Qing Luo and also to ask her. Yi Qing Luo shook her head, "I don't know." Pausing for a moment, he asked again, "Are you 2 enemies? Why did he attack you the moment he arrived?" Wing 9 squinted that pair of cold phoenix eyes meaningfully as he gave an evil smile. "Why do I feel that, Pavilion Master Chu? Attacked me because of you? Because of me? Yi Qing Luo frowned as her face was filled with puzzlement. Wing Nine's vision went back and forth between the two of them as he spoke in a teasing tone, Miss Mu. Looks like you really have many secrets on you which makes one want to investigate. Chapter 5100. That gaze which seemed as though he had seen his prey made Yi Qing Luo frown in displeasure. Yi Jiao slowly shifted his gaze onto Zhu Wu Xian as he gave an evil smile. Pavilion Master Chu, could it be that you've also taken a fancy to Miss Mu? What did he mean by, you too? Yi Qing Luo really wanted to smash Yi Jiao's head. As though she was the one who attracted bees and butterflies everywhere. Zhu Wu Xian didn't answer Yi Jiao's question as his gaze fell onto Yi Qing Luo as his deep gaze probed her identity. But his words were directed at Yi Jiao. What's the relationship between Yi Jiao and her? Yi Jiao pondered seriously for a moment before giving an answer. Consider it as this lord wants her to be this lord's future princess consort, this kind of relationship. Yi Qing Luo. Zhu Wu Xian's gaze turned slightly cold. His thin lips moved slightly as he spoke calmly, then, you won't have this chance. Why? Yi Jiao raised his brows with a smile yet not a smile. Could it be that Pavilion Master Chu also wants Miss Mu to become your future pavilion mistress? Zhu Wu Xian had no intention to reply. He stared at Yi Qing Luo as his voice was calm. You really don't know me? That gaze seemed to have seen through Yi Qing Luo's disguise. Yi Qing Luo's heart thumped. But her face maintained a sense of unfamiliarity and vigilance with some puzzlement. She said, Pavilion Master Chu. You and I have never met before today and I've never heard of your name, so how would you talk about knowing each other? Zhu Wu Xian's pupils contracted slightly as he turned around and left without saying a word. Yi Qing Luo. So, did he believe her or not? TSK. Yi Jiao propped his chin as he sized Yi Qing Luo up curiously. Miss Mu, you're really popular. First there's the Overlord, and now there's Hong Qing Pavilion's Pavilion Master. Just be direct, who else has fallen under your skirt? Yi Qing Luo. She felt that she was on the verge of falling off the horse. But before there was any evidence, she would never admit it. Yi Jiao saw Yi Qing Luo ignoring him and walked over to her side. Why? You're still counting how many love rivals this king has? Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes at him and couldn't be bothered to reply to his teasing words. She asked directly, so? The person who had been staring at me from the start and attacking me with various gazes, was this Pavilion Master Chu? It's obvious. Wing Nine spread his arms and smiled lazily. Yi Qing Luo chuckled. How do you know that you can use this method to lure him out? Because this king is a man. Wing Nine smiled mysteriously. Well. This king's method is still very successful. Two lovers are drawn out in one go. Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes once again as she didn't want to bother with him anymore. Most importantly, she also did not know how to explain the strange attitude of the groom and Zhu Wuxin towards her. Yi Qing Luo couldn't be bothered with him as she directly walked towards the wedding ceremony. Wing Nine caught up to him. Do you still want to go back and watch your old Qing marry another woman? Madam is still there. Yi Qing Luo replied and added another sentence very seriously, that's not some old Qing Ren. Yi Wang, please be careful with your words. She had just returned to the wedding ceremony. Yi Qing Luo saw Madame Huang Xi who was surrounded by numerous people. A group of people were pulling her along as they chatted, as though their relationship was extremely good. Madame Huang Xi tried to leave several times but was stopped. She heaved a sigh of relief when she saw Yi Qing Luo returning. Chapter 5101. Fortunately, Sunset Rain was safe and sound. Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly when she saw the crowd surrounding Madame Huang Xi. She squeezed into the crowd and with a protective stance, she pulled Madame Huang Xi behind her. I'm sorry everyone, please keep the air fresh. She protected Madame Huang Xi. Her delicate face was clear and her voice was soft as she explained, I am Fu Rao's accompanying doctor. Fu Rao is not feeling well and should not drink. She casually picked up a glass of wine beside her and raised it to the crowd. Thank you for your hospitality. After that, she drank it in one gulp. Her lips curled up and she smiled sweetly. The crowd didn't make things difficult for her. They had heard that Demon Phoenix Continent's Fu Rao had a problem with his health. But they didn't expect that it had reached the point where he needed an accompanying doctor. Their original intention was to keep Madame Huang Xi at the wedding venue. Now, Madame Huang Xi had no intention to leave. The crowd said a few words of concern and dispersed. Yiqing Luo helped Madame Huang Xi back to her seat. If you don't want to entertain, you can reject. Madame Huang Xi sized up Yiqing Luo. Are you all right? Where did Yi Wang bring you? Did he do anything to you? No. Yiqing Luo smiled and shook her head in relief. He's just saying it casually, but he's still a gentleman and won't really do anything to me. So, in Miss Mu's heart, this lord's image is so high. E9's sloppy voice came from behind. E9 swayed his outstanding figure and swayed in front of Yiqing Luo, with a devilish smile. He turned around gracefully and brushed past Yiqing Luo's eyes as he sat sideways on the chair beside her. After that, he put one hand on the back of the chair behind her shoulder. His posture was full of intimacy, but how can Miss Mu be sure that this lord is just saying it casually and not sincere? The fragrance of green bamboo lingered around. Yiqing Luo raised her head expressionlessly and looked at E9, because, Yi Wang doesn't like me. If he doesn't like you, why would this lord let you be my future princess? E9 laughed. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand and clasped Yi Jiu's wrist, then slowly moved his hand away from his back. Until his breath was far away from her. Yiqing Luo then calmly opened her mouth. You will have to ask King Yi what motive do you have? After putting some distance between her and Yi Jiu, she casually leaned against the back of the chair. She raised her long and narrow eyes and looked at Yi Jiu with a faint smile. King Yi, my eyes don't lie. She raised a white and slender hand and brushed Yi Jiu's eyes through the air. When you look at me with those eyes of yours, I don't feel any affection at all. The smile on Wing Nine's face gradually froze. His deep eyes were fixated on the young girl. After a long time, he suddenly laughed. Miss Mu, no matter what kind of feelings this prince has for you, if this prince wants to marry you, then this prince is serious. Ha! Yiqing Luo gave a light chuckle. I have a husband who loves me, so why would Duke Yi feel that I would abandon a man who loves me deeply, and choose a man like you? Whose feelings for me are unclear. Yiqing Luo propped up her chin. So, King Yi, if you want to get something from me, or if you have other motives, I advise you to give up. Because, I am something that you will never be able to, father. Cough, of course our Luo, can't do that. Chapter 5102. Fairy. That's right. This baby is a fairy, this fairy. Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change as she said the last two words. Yi Jiu was stunned at first, but when he realized the meaning of Yiqing Luo's words, he gave a charming smile. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about him, but turned her head to talk to Madame Huang Xi. Madame Huang Xi didn't know what happened between the two of them outside, but she could tell that the relationship between the two had become slightly closer. She was a little worried. But in the end, there was nothing. After confirming that the groom wasn't Dmo Xian, Yiqing Luo had no intention to crash the wedding. So, the wedding went smoothly. But, Yiqing Luo felt that this wedding shouldn't end like this. From the groom's appearance to when he led the demon palace to the ceremonial stage, she was slightly stunned. Until the toast, the demon palace's words and the groom's expression. Until the end, when he looked for her, with a face full of guilt, as if he was hiding endless difficulties. She could almost conclude. This bridegroom was probably here for her. No, to be more precise, he was here for Yiqing Luo. The person behind the groom was probably already suspicious of her current identity. So he deliberately used the groom to provoke her. If she showed a trace of being moved by the groom, or make a move to crash the wedding, to snatch the bride, that was to directly strip her of her disguise. The person behind the scenes, was it the demon palace or someone else? Most importantly, how did the other party know that she was Yiqing Luo? But the groom's probing. She should have performed well. After all, she knew that the groom wasn't Dmo Xian. The only fluctuation in her heart. Probably seeing Dmo Xian's handsome appearance in the wedding robe. After all, the other party was wearing Dmo Xian's face. If the real purpose of this wedding was just to draw her out, then, this wedding, it would never progress so smoothly. Yiqing Luo was in her mind, connecting all the things together. She was still thinking. Suddenly, there was a sound coming from the ceremonial stage. Following that, she heard someone shouting, "Overlord." Yiqing Luo regained her senses from the calculations in her mind. Just as he looked over. Then, she saw a man dressed in a red wedding robe, striding in her direction. It was extremely fast. Everywhere it passed, a shapeless profound ripple was formed, and it pushed all the people that were in its way to the side. The red wedding robe was like a ripple spreading out. Yiqing Luo. What the hell, what kind of situation was this? What was he trying to do by walking towards her? Yiqing Luo subconsciously wanted to stand up to avoid the groom's attack. Before he could move. The groom was already standing in front of Yiqing Luo as he stretched out his hand and grabbed her wrist. "This lord will not marry her." He stared at Yiqing Luo word by word, as though it was difficult and filled with suffering. Even that low and hoarse voice had a tinge of bitterness in it. "I'm not marrying her anymore. Don't deny me, okay?" Yiqing Luo, what the hell was going on? What did the bridegroom mean? Yiqing Luo wanted to struggle free from the groom's hand. But the groom held it even tighter. "I know I'm wrong. Overlord, what do you mean by this?" Just as everyone was stunned by this scene, the demon palace started her performance. Her cold and elegant face was filled with anger. Chapter 5103. Following that, he dragged his phoenix coronet and robe as he walked over in big strides. This angry shout. It also shocked the crowd. Instantly, the guests who came to watch the ceremony looked towards the groom and Yiqing Luo as they started to discuss. Madame Huang Xi was stunned by this scene. She immediately stood up and stretched out her hand to push away the groom's hand which was holding Yiqing Luo's. Before she got near, the groom waved his sleeves and a surge of boundless profound energy pushed her to one side. He raised his eyes that were as deep as the abyss and stared at Madame Huang Xi with a frosty gaze. "On account of her, I will forgive your rudeness. You have no right to speak here." Madame Huang Xi staggered a few steps from the push and only managed to stabilize herself by holding onto the table. Following that, the groom turned his head to look at Yiqing Luo and the expression on his face instantly changed. That pair of inky black eyes seemed to be filled with tenderness. "Overlord." Under the crowd's discussion, the young lady's voice wasn't loud but it was clearly transmitted into everyone's ears. Yiqing Luo totally couldn't guess what this impostor was trying to do. She could only maintain her persona as her face was filled with anger and impatience. "What on earth are you trying to do? I regret it." The groom suppressed his voice as he spoke in an apologetic tone. "I shouldn't make such a choice. What has your regret got to do with me?" Yi Qing Luo looked at the devil hall, which was getting nearer and nearer as she spoke even faster. Overlord, you and I don't know each other. If you regret, or if you should do anything, that's between you and the devil hall. She paused and continued, if it's because you don't want to get married to demonic hall and regret at the last minute, so you casually captured me in an attempt to end this wedding, then forgive me for not being able to help. It's a fact that you're getting married to demonic hall and there's no leeway to regret. Most importantly, I'm a married woman. When the young lady said the last 4 words, her narrow eyes rose. I can't let anyone spoil my reputation and let others misunderstand that there's some unclear relationship between us. So, Overlord, please find someone else. I'm not getting married. The groom stubbornly repeated. His grip on Yi Qing Luo's wrist increased in strength. That pair of deep black eyes were also filled with determination. Come with me, I will explain everything to you. Yi Qing Luo was in so much pain that her brows creased tightly and her forehead wrinkled. At this moment, Yi Jiao suddenly pressed on the groom's hand and directly pried his hand open, saving Yi Qing Luo. He looked sloppily at the groom's deep eyes and sneered, Lord Dizun, don't you understand? Whether you get married or not has nothing to do with Lady Mu. The groom's gaze turned cold, and it was as if a sharp blade was cutting Yi Jiao's skin. Yi Jiao remained unmoved. Instead, he laughed heartily. A dignified overlord, in order to escape from a marriage, you smeared the name of a girl you don't even know. Have you ever thought that you've successfully escaped from the marriage? Then, what will happen to Miss Mu? Wing King. The groom enunciated each word coldly. This is between me and her. It has nothing to do with you. There's no other way. Who asked this lord to pursue her? Yi Jiao spread out his hands and shrugged. Didn't you see Miss Mu's face was filled with rejection? As a qualified pursuer who wants to marry Miss Mu, naturally I have to help her, lest her reputation is ruined by you. Chapter 5104. Scram. The groom's thin lips moved as he spat out an icy cold word. Yi Jiao stood in front of Yi Qing Luo. Just as he was about to open his mouth, he saw the young lady walking past him as she looked at the groom calmly. Overlord, your actions are really shameful. Have you recognized the wrong person, or are you just casually trying to catch a lady and coincidentally caught me? Even if I'm really the person you're looking for. I also want to tell you that you're really disgusting. The young lady's voice was still that soft. But the words she spat out. Her mouth was vicious. Moreover, it was extremely arrogant. The surrounding crowd sucked in a breath of cold air. This young lady actually scolded the overlord? Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but scold. She even activated her ridicule mode. She scoffed lightly as her vision fell onto the demon palace and returned back to the groom. Since you've chosen to marry the demon palace lord, then reneging on the wedding ceremony. Your way of doing things is really heartless. This makes me have no choice but to make a conjecture as a conspiracy theory. Based on the rumored ability of the overlord, if he wanted to escape from the wedding quietly, there's actually no problem at all. But you purposely did it with such great fanfare. What's your intention? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as a cold arc flashed past the corner of her eyes. Let me make a bold guess, the overlord is provoking the internal strife between the demon phoenix continent and the demon palace? After Yi Qing Luo said this, the crowd who were originally discussing about Yi Qing Luo instantly shifted their focus. Because what Yi Qing Luo said indeed made sense. If the overlord wanted to escape from the wedding, there was no need for him to renege halfway through the wedding ceremony before reneging on it. And even announced it to everyone with such great fanfare. The reason why he reneged on it was because of the accompanying doctor from the demon phoenix continent? No one would believe it no matter who he gave it to. The groom probably didn't expect Yi Qing Luo to be able to change the direction of the wind in just a few words. His pitch-black eyes which stared at Yiqing Luo contracted slightly. Although it was very slight. But Yiqing Luo who had been staring at the groom saw it clearly. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about the groom's intention, but looked towards the Devil Hall as the cold intent on her face slowly retracted. "Sir Devil Hall, I'm so sorry. I can assure you that I have no interest in the person whom you're getting married to today." The Demon Hall had originally come here to put on a show. But he didn't even have time to say a single line. But because of Yiqing Luo's interference, she didn't know whether to be angry or not. Without waiting for the Devil Palace to speak, the groom took another step closer to Yiqing Luo. However, Wing 9 quickly intercepted him. The groom stared at Yiqing Luo, enunciating every single word with a chilly glint in his eyes. "Who exactly are you?" This question made Yiqing Luo laugh. "You don't even know who I am, but you keep pestering me in private. Don't you think it's funny?" She laughed mockingly. "Overlord, your method is really lame." The groom clenched his fists tightly as his fingertips turned white, as his eyes seemed to be gathering boundless turbulent waves. "Miss Mu, are you sure? You and my husband have no relationship?" The Demon Hall frowned as he stared at Yiqing Luo coldly. Yiqing Luo smiled. "I'm a married woman, what relationship can I have with him? To tell the truth, this is the first time I'm seeing him here." The Demon Hall's eyes were filled with suspicion. "You keep saying that you're a married woman, but I've never seen your husband before." Chapter 5105. I suspect that you don't have any husband at all. The cold expression on the Devil Lord's face turned chilly. "Moreover, I heard that you came all the way to Devil Head City to attend my wedding. Your motive is to snatch the bride, to snatch my husband, the Overlord. Am I right?" When the last two words left her mouth, the Devil Lord raised his hand and clapped. Very quickly, there were two Devil Lord's guards, one on the left and one on the right, walking over. That person was Madame Huang Xi's previous personal maid, Hai Lan. Hai Lan was covered with injuries and her face was pale. When she saw the Devil Lord, she shrank back in fear. The Devil Lord's cold eyes looked at Hai Lan as he sneered. "Now, tell everyone what you heard in the Madame's residence." When she saw Hai Lan coming out, Yiqing Luo was completely sure. The reason why she almost fell off the horse. It was probably because of the two words "bride snatching" which spread to the Devil Lord's ears, which aroused suspicion. This was obviously. This Devil Lord and that fake Overlord knew about it. The woman beside Dmo Xian was Yiqing Luo. That was why he tried to test her, to find out if she was Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's expression remained unchanged as she calmly raised her slender brows. I'm not, don't be blind." Hai Lan's eyes widened. "The entire Madame's residence can testify that you came to Devil Head City to snatch the bride." Yiqing Luo smiled and asked in reply, "Since I want to snatch the bride, why must everyone know about it? Are you afraid that the Devil Lord doesn't know that someone is going to snatch the bride? Moreover, if I spread the news that I'm going to Devil Head City to snatch the Overlord, even a maid like you knows about it, then wouldn't Madame know about it? If Madame knew about it and still brought me to Devil Head City, you mean Madame has the intention to disrupt the Devil Lord and Overlord Great Rao's marriage ceremony? Is this what you mean?" Harlan's face turned pale as she questioned him word by word. No one had expected Yiqing Luo to directly deny it. She even covered the entire pot. If this matter were to nod, then it wasn't just Yiqing Luo alone who was suspected of snatching the bride. But it had risen to the height of the three Devil Continents and the Devil Lord. And, most importantly, if the Devil Hall were to forcefully push this responsibility onto Huang Sifu Rao, the Devil Hall would not be able to deal with him. It would definitely cause a backlash from the other two continents and other forces. After all, from Yiqing Luo's interrogation, the situation had already changed. Madame Huang Xi was not a fool. How could he have known that his accompanying physician would stir up trouble on such an important occasion and even bring him here? If Fu Rao's accompanying doctor really wanted to kidnap the bride, he would definitely die. Huang Sifu took on the heavy responsibility. Most importantly, this was the wedding ceremony of the Lord of the Devil Hall and Dizun. How could a mere physician kidnap the bride? What a joke! Everyone would start to suspect, was the Demon Hall trying to find an excuse to attack the Devil Continent? Thus, he rebounded completely. Hence, the Demon Hall could not acknowledge it. Yi Qing Luo's counter-question was reasonable and reasonable. No. You really went to Devil Head City to kidnap the bride. Your husband is Lord Dizun. You want to snatch your husband from Lord Devil Hall? Harlan shouted in disbelief. Her eyes widened as her face was filled with panic. She heard the whispers around her and the way they looked at her. As well as the peach-robed black-haired young lady in front of her, looking down at her from above. Chapter 5106. The defense in Highland's heart completely collapsed. She turned towards the direction of the demonic palace and screamed in panic, "Lord Demonic Palace, please believe me, I am absolutely not lying, it's her, she said it herself, she wants to snatch the bride. I don't dare to lie to you." But there wasn't any emotion on the demonic palace's cold face. Her face was cold as she stared at Hai Lan for a long time. Finally, her voice was icy cold as she spoke in a dignified tone, "Whether it's true or false, I will decide." Her gaze flickered. The demonic guards understood as they carried Hai Lan up from both sides and dragged her down. Harlan naturally understood what would be waiting for her if she continued to drag this out. She kept crying and begging for mercy. Her voice slowly disappeared from the wedding ceremony. The crowd's discussion quietened down. For a moment, the atmosphere was stiff. The demonic palace held the groom's arm as she looked at Yi Qing Luo coldly. A pair of icy cold eyes carried a few sharp blades. I wonder if Dr. Mu has heard of this saying. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled, "Please speak." There's no smoke without fire. She glanced sideways at the expressionless groom who was staring at Yi Qing Luo with a burning gaze. If it wasn't for the fact that you really don't covet the overlord, why would there be such news? Most importantly, she paused slightly. Her tone suddenly turned sharp, the overlord seems to treat you differently. Yi Qing Luo's expression remained unchanged. If he has the intention to frame me, there's no smoke without fire. As for why the groom is like this, I'm also very curious. She smiled slightly as she was very calm. Before today, the groom and I have indeed not met before, so. For this answer, I'm afraid Lord Demonic Palace has to ask the people around you. The Demonic Palace's exquisite brows creased slightly. There were some subtle changes on his expression. Suddenly, a sharp voice was heard from the crowd, "Look at your vixen look, you only know how to seduce men at night. Who knows if you're taking the opportunity when Lord Demonic Palace isn't paying attention to give the overlord a flirtatious look." Following that, Jiang Shuang, who was dressed in a jade-green long dress, rushed out in big strides. "What do you mean you're a married woman? Call your husband out if you have the ability. I still want to ask him personally. Does he know that you've been seducing people outside?" Jiang Shuanger's sharp words and stern countenance made the heavy atmosphere a little more turbulent. Yi Qing Luo looked at Jiang Shuanger in surprise. Who would have thought that this woman would appear at this critical juncture? He was really stupid. Yi Qing Luo gave a light laugh as she replied Jiang Shuanger's words calmly, "I'm afraid. The minute my husband stands out, Big Sister Jiang's heart would be stirred and she would secretly send flirtatious glances towards my husband, so. In order to protect him, I can only hide him." Then, she gently stroked her cheeks with her slender fingers and said with a sweet smile, "Does Big Sister Jiang mean that I'm good-looking? I also think that I'm very good looking. However, big sister Jiang, you don't have to feel inferior. Even if you're ugly, with big sister Jiang's identity, you won't have to worry about no one marrying you. The girl's voice was soft and gentle, and her tone was very calm. But every single word that came out of her mouth was pricked right into Jiang Shuanger's heart. You. Jiang Shuanger was so angry that her face turned pale as she gritted her teeth and stared at her angrily. You're obviously feeling guilty. How could a normal married woman possibly be so ostentatious outside? Chapter 5107. As Jiang Shuanger spoke, her gaze shifted to Wing 9. You keep saying that you're already a married woman, but you're the former Venerable the Arch, the latter King Hooked Wing. You are a vixen. Who didn't know? The Demon Wing Continent's Wing King hated women the most. On top of that, his face was extremely bewitching. Very few women could surpass his peerless beauty. Because of this, there were rumors going around. The Demon Wing Continent's Wing King was a homosexual. This was probably the first time Zhong Rong saw the Wing King being so intimate with a woman, right? Moreover, Yi Wang had even stretched out his hand to hold the young girl's wrist. Now that Jiang Shuanger mentioned it, everyone's gazes towards Yi Qing Luo were filled with different emotions. Let's not talk about whether or not this girl seduced the overlord behind the Devil Hall's back. It was this young lady who kept saying that she was already a married woman, but she didn't know how to distance herself from Yi Wang. This was enough. That was enough for everyone to despise him. It was no wonder that the Lord of the Demonic Hall would suspect her. Seeing that the surrounding guests were all standing on his side, Jiang Shuanger straightened her back proudly. What? Is it because you have no way to defend yourself? I'm just too lazy to talk to you, wasting my saliva. Yi Qing Luo glanced at her indifferently, her eyes filled with indifference. It was as if he did not take Jiang Shuanger seriously at all. So in the demon domain, women are supposed to stay at home and take care of their husbands and children? Then, does this mean that after the Devil Hall and the groom get married, they should also hand over all the power of the Devil Hall to the groom? Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up as she retorted with a smile. Jiang Shuanger didn't expect Yi Qing Luo to be so direct and wanted to refute. Don't explain. Yi Qing Luo impolitely interrupted her. What you said earlier revealed the meaning of this point. Yi Qing Luo spoke very quickly and in an imposing manner, absolutely suppressing Jiang Shuanger. Although I'm a married woman, but that doesn't mean that I must stay by my husband's side. Furthermore, King Yi only looks up to me because of Fu Rao. Why did it become so unbearable in your mouth? I've heard a saying before. What a person sees is what he or she sees. You're dirty, so everything you see is dirty. Yi Qing Luo's explanation was so calm and composed. She was so calm that many people saw Wing 9 grab her wrist. They all felt that it was just an accident. When Yi Jiao heard this sentence, his thin lips curled upwards in a smile which didn't look like a smile, as he looked towards Yi Qing Luo. But ultimately he didn't expose Yi Qing Luo at this moment. Or to emphasize that Yi Qing Luo was his future princess etc. Jiang Shuanger didn't know how to refute. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she glanced at Devil Hall and smiled. Or Devil Hall also feel that after you and the groom get married, it will turn into internal affairs and you only need to revolve around this husband of yours? The Demon Palace. Of course not. The Devil Domain could allow Madame Huang Xi, the Devil Hall, and other similar women to wield power and become the ruler of a continent, or an existence that could keep the balance. Naturally, he acknowledged the woman's strength. Compared to the outside world, the demon region cared more about strength. The strong were respected. As long as one was strong enough, no matter if you were male or female, young or old, everyone would be willing to submit. Even if the woman got married, it wouldn't affect her own status. Yiqing Luo's rhetorical question. It really made one unable to answer. Chapter 5108. The cold expression of the demon sovereign was incomparably gloomy. A pair of sharp and sinister eyes glared at Jiang Shuang'er. He gritted his teeth, this idiot. Jiang Shuang'er, who was being cut by the demon palace's malicious gaze, was so frightened that she couldn't stop trembling. He wanted to cry but had no tears. She clearly wanted to use this opportunity to curry favor with the demon hall and incite a conflict between the demon hall and that slut. This way, he could kill two birds with one stone. Not only could he gain the favor of the demonic palace, but he could also take the opportunity to get rid of that slut. But now, he had outsmarted himself. The demonic palace bore a grudge against her. At this moment, the atmosphere at the wedding ceremony was extremely strange. The guests did not know whether to leave or stay. No one spoke up to smooth things over. What a joke, at this critical juncture, who would dare to speak? This was a big wedding day, and the groom was going to regret it. The person who had their marriage annulled was the lord of the demon palace, who had the highest status in the demon domain. It was Di Zun who broke off the engagement in public. Di Zun had even grabbed a girl in public. He had broken off the engagement because of the girl. But the girl had explained it clearly. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed like Di Zun didn't want to marry the lord of the demonic palace, so he used her as cannon fodder. But now, even if they were cannon fodder, Di Zun pulled. This young lady would not be able to escape from being implicated. While everyone was lost in their thoughts, Devil Hall's red lips moved slightly as her eyes turned gloomy and cold as she stared at Yiqing Luo and slowly opened her mouth. Dr. Mu need not confuse the public and change the topic. I don't care about what Big Sister Jiang said. She clasped the groom's arm tightly as her vision wandered between the groom and Yiqing Luo, speaking in an icy cold tone. This highness only wants to know, this highness's groom, this highness's husband. Why would he embarrass this highness in public because of you? You have to ask him about that. Yiqing Luo replied innocently. In any case, he would carry out the, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know anything, to the end. The demon hall pushed the groom. You. The bridegroom's elegant face was expressionless as that pair of surging black eyes stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. He said nothing. The pressure on his body was also extremely low. Those who were close to him found it difficult to even breathe. However, under the deep and burning gaze of the bridegroom, the girl hooked her pink lips without the slightest pressure, crossed her arms over her chest, and smiled calmly. Is the groom still racking his brains to come up with an excuse? I want to see your husband. That man who maintained the low pressure and remained silent, opened his mouth after Yiqing Luo's words ended. Immediately, the demon hall's expression became even uglier. He remained silent at her question. Instead, he answered the girl's questions at any time. The bridegroom had no intention of giving her face at all. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly. From the looks of it, it seems that if I don't prove that I have a husband today, you guys aren't going to let me off. Meet her husband? This was because he was suspicious of her identity and was certain that Dmo Xian would not appear here, hence he made such a request. Or was it because he was certain that she didn't have a husband? However, one thing was certain. It didn't matter if the demonic hall suspected her identity or if they were testing her. The other party did not intend to let her leave this place alive. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes squinted unknowingly. Suddenly, a slight sound rang out in the silence of the wedding ceremony, where only the sound of breathing could be heard. That was the sound made by the chair rubbing against the ground. Chapter 5109. Someone moved. Everyone immediately looked towards the direction of the voice. They saw a seat at the corner. A fiery red figure slowly stood up. The man in the red robe had a tall and slender figure. He looked simple but luxurious. That grave and stern face was so cold that it was suffocating. He was, Red Clear Pavilion's pavilion master, Zhu Wu Xian. Towards this pavilion master Chu. Everyone in the Devil region had heard of his deeds, but they weren't familiar with him. They only knew that he was a cold-hearted man. Pavilion Master Chu stood up at this moment. What was he trying to do? Could it be that he felt that the atmosphere was too depressing and the things that happened were too boring? So he wanted to leave? With Pavilion Master Chu taking the lead, the other guests who wanted to leave would have the chance. Just as everyone was thinking about this, that cold man in red robe wasn't heading towards the entrance of the wedding ceremony. Instead, he was heading towards the direction of the Devil Hall and the young lady. Everyone had a blank and puzzled expression. What was Pavilion Master Chu trying to do? Yiqing Luo was also looking at Zhu Wu Xian. The moment she saw Zhu Wu Xian stand up, Yiqing Luo's heart thumped. Based on her understanding of Zhu Wu Xian, this guy. Surely he wasn't intending to admit that he was her husband? Earlier at the splendid scene, she and Zhu Wu Xian were already very clear. Zhu Wu Xian should believe that she wasn't Yiqing Luo. But now that Zhu Wu Xian stood up, once he admitted that he was her husband, then there would be no way to end this. If the other party suspected that she was Yiqing Luo, then he would definitely know about Zhu Wu Xian's feelings towards Yiqing Luo. At this moment, Zhu Wu Xian appeared. Basically, it was equivalent to peeling off her disguise. Although Zhu Wu Xian admitted it, it was probably to help her out of this predicament. But this was obviously a trap for her. The Devil Hall and the others had been staring at them. Yiqing Luo couldn't give Zhu Wu Xian a meaningful glance. She could only frown as she looked at Zhu Wu Xian with an uneasy expression. Zhu Wu Xian seemed as though he didn't receive her offensive glare. Step by step, he got closer. Finally, he stood in the middle of the Devil Hall and Yiqing Luo, about 3 steps away, and stopped. Wearing a bright red robe at someone else's wedding ceremony? Perhaps only Zhu Wuxin could do so. Most importantly, Zhu Wuxin was dressed in such a simple manner. They were even more dazzling than the newlyweds in front of them. The Demon Queen frowned. Pavilion Master Chu, Zhu Wu Xian's gaze unhurriedly fell onto Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo knitted her brows tightly. This girl really wanted to acknowledge him as her husband. She pursed her pink lips, and before Chu Wuxin could open his mouth, she spoke first, Pavilion Master Chu, before he could say anything. Suddenly, a familiar sandalwood scent lingered in his nose. Yiqing Luo's heart inexplicably trembled. Is that kind of palpitating happiness? Even the profound phoenix ring, which was still dim, was slightly scorching her. The words that were about to come out of his mouth stopped because of these strange feelings. That pair of long and narrow eyes overflowed with joy. She lowered her head and looked at her white fingers. The profound phoenix ring's radiance was still dim. But that scorching feeling was definitely not an illusion. It was. Ah Xian. Had he come? Yiqing Luo totally didn't care about the person in front of her. Instead, she immediately turned around and searched the surroundings, attempting to find that familiar figure. Chapter 51:10. The joy and agitated expression on the young lady's face were all taken in by Zhu Wu Xian. His cold and handsome face was covered with a layer of haze. He naturally could tell. The young lady's joy and agitation wasn't directed at him. He was staring at the unfamiliar delicate face in front of him. Every smile and frown was totally different from the young lady in his memory. Even her voice was different. However, he was able to superimpose the two of them together. Chu Wu Xian lowered his eyes slightly as he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Dash, thud, thud, thud. A set of slow footsteps was heard from afar. That sounded like the footsteps of some magical beast. The footsteps were slow, neither fast nor slow. Someone was here again. Everyone looked towards the direction of the sound. Thud, thud. The footsteps were getting nearer. A figure entered the main door of the wedding ceremony, which was made of flowers, and entered everyone's eyes. As compared to when Zhu Wu Xian stood up, it was even more eye-catching. Then everyone saw a pig's head. Yes, they didn't see it wrongly. It was a pig's head that popped into the main door. The pig's head shook its two pink and tender pig ears, and a pair of pig's eyes darted around. Its body was like a hedgehog's hair as it spread out loosely. The entire pig had a relaxed posture. The crowd was in an uproar. Coming to attend the Lord Demon Hall and the Overlord Great Rao's wedding, and riding a mount into the wedding ceremony? Forget about the mount. But it was a pig? One by one, their gazes which were staring at that pig's head shifted away, indicating that they weren't too interested. But Madame Huang Xi's gaze, which was staring at that pig, was unblinking. That pig. Why did it look familiar? It seemed like that pig in her house? Zhu Sha. The young lady had already opened her mouth and called out that pig's name. When the young lady's voice rang, that tender pig ears instantly stood up. Following that pair of pig eyes looked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Yuan Lu's shiny black pig eyes were filled with excitement. It moved its hooves as it pounced towards Yiqing Luo. With this leap, the whole pig entered the scene of the wedding ceremony. Everyone saw it. Sitting on the pig's body was a tall and slender figure. His bamboo-colored gown hung down and rested on the back of a pig that was as fluffy as a porcupine. His face was young and innocent, and his eyebrows were as black as ink. She had a pair of blue eyes that were as clear as water, like sapphire, and a pair of captivating red lips. His entire person was breathtaking, so obedient that it made one want to dote on him. What a handsome man. Who was this? When did such an obedient and handsome man appear in the infernal domain? The man riding on the pig trod on the ground covered with petals with a da-da-da sound. Then, it stopped beside Zhu Wuxin. He jumped down from Cinnabar's back. The bamboo-colored robe flowed down, leaving behind a streak of green. His voice was low and hoarse, as if it was mellow in wine. He was careless, but there was also a formless pressure on him. Listen, you want to see me? A voice that was neither too fast nor too slow resounded throughout the ceremony. Meet him? Everyone was still a little confused, not understanding what the man meant. But they heard the man's next sentence, I am Yu's husband, Chao Yun. His gaze looked straight at Yiqing Luo. Following that, he stretched out his arms towards the young lady as he gave an obedient and pure smile, Wife, I'm sorry, I'm late. Everyone drew in a breath of cold air. This man was actually Dr. Mu's husband? Chapter 51:11. The people from the Devil Hall kept on shouting that they had never seen Dr. Mu's husband before. She also believed that Dr. Mu's claim that she was a married woman was just an excuse to deny that she had any relationship with Di Zun. Who would have thought that Physician Mu's husband would really appear? Moreover, this man looked very obedient and harmless. Compared to the young girl who was as pretty as a picture but had sharp words, they didn't seem to be from the same world. However, just as everyone was immersed in their own thoughts. Just a moment ago, she was still arrogant and confident, and her words were sharp as she faced the demon hall and the doubts of the people around her. She was like a goddess of war. It flew towards the man with the delicate and obedient face. The girl, who was as pretty as a picture and looked like the girl next door, finally revealed her feminine side. Then, she threw herself into the man's arms and hugged. Yiqing Luo buried her head in the man's chest, inhaling the familiar sandalwood fragrance, her long and narrow eyes curved. "You're back." The girl's voice was soft as she said those words. Like a huge bell, it pounded on the man's heart. Dmo Xian's eyes were gentle as he slightly lowered his eyes, congealing the young lady's face, his voice gentle. "Yes, I'm back." His big palm, covered the back of the girl's head, tightly hugged her slender waist. "I missed you." "Me too." Yiqing Luo's lips curled up into a smile, becoming more and more radiant. Seeing that Dmo Xian was safe and sound, his heart, which had been hanging in the air, was finally at ease. The demonic hall spread the news of his marriage with Di Zun. Yiqing Luo had been worried that Dmo Xian had met with some danger, otherwise how would the Devil Palace possibly have the guts to create a fake overlord to marry her? Moreover, Dmo Xian had not gone to the Devil Forest to look for her. There was no news of him either. She couldn't help but think about it more. Now, he was relieved. "You're Dr. Mu's husband?" Just as the two of them were being affectionate, the demon hall's questioning voice rang out, "How do you prove it?" She stared at the man suspiciously, her eyes cold. This girl, did she really have a so-called husband? Then, was she really not? The demon royal palace frowned. Her cold and beautiful eyes glanced sideways at the groom beside her. If that girl was as he had guessed. When she saw the groom, it was impossible for her to remain indifferent. Time and time again to test the waters. The other party's behavior made her doubt her conjecture. At this moment, when the girl's husband appeared, she was starting to waver. This was because she could see that the moment the man appeared, his expression changed. The light in the depths of the young girl's eyes and the way she looked at the man. It couldn't be faked. The man who had suddenly appeared was indeed the person that the young girl valued the most. Dmo Xian held on to Yiqing Luo's waist as he slightly raised his eyes, looking towards the Devil Hall, and beside her, that man who bore a striking resemblance to the Overlord. He furrowed his brows and pursed his red lips. The Demon Hall also noticed it. The moment the man lifted his eyes and shifted his gaze away from the girl, the man's azure eyes, which were as clear as the ocean, suddenly surged with a turbulent wave. It was like a whirlpool. The moment their gazes met, Yi Zichen's heart sank. She even felt an indescribable fear welling up from the depths of her heart. That's right. It was fear. She, the dignified lord of the Devil Hall, controlled the entire Devil region. At this moment, she was actually afraid of a seemingly innocent and harmless man. This knowledge made the Devil Hall's heart thump fiercely. A woman's intuition told her. This man wasn't simple. Chapter 51:12. Demonic Palace's mind was filled with thoughts as she sized up the man in front of her seriously. She heard the man's mellow and husky voice, without any emotions, but filled with an unexplainable domineering aura. "What has the relationship between my wife and me got to do with you? Why do I need to prove it to you?" Demonic Palace's face turned cold. Ever since she became the lord of the Demonic Palace, it had been a long time since she met someone who dared to go against her. Her cold and elegant eyes stared at Dmo Xian's seemingly obedient and harmless face, as her voice was deep and treacherous. "Today, is this Palace Lord's and Sir Overlord's marriage ceremony. She seduced the Overlord, and made the Overlord to publicly regret this Palace Lord's marriage for her. Now that you've come out and said that you're her husband, what's wrong with me asking you for proof?" The man's face didn't show much emotion. On this point, he was rather similar to the expressionless groom beside her. Demonic Palace pondered for a moment before continuing. "If you're really her husband, then, you should stand on my side and ask her how she hooked up with the Overlord." Dmo Xian's azure blue eyes turned incomparably sharp as he listened to the woman's words. Demonic Palace thought that he was enraged because of her words. Her cold and elegant red lips unconsciously curled up into a contented smile. But the next moment, she saw the man embracing the young lady in an absolutely protective manner as he encircled her in his arms. His gaze was cold as he stared at Demonic Palace. It's your incompetence that you can't take good care of your own groom. Don't blame your incompetence on my wife. He paused slightly before continuing, you said that my wife seduced the groom, show me the proof. Incompetence, these two words were deeply embedded in Demonic Palace's mind. The groom broke the engagement on the spot of the wedding ceremony. It wasn't just the groom's problem. The bride had indeed failed. Demonic Palace didn't say a word. Dmo Xian glanced at the groom with a smile that didn't look like a smile as he spoke in a mocking tone, finally, because I'm her husband. No matter what happens, I will stand by her side unconditionally. And, I believe in her. My wife, I dote on her. You, who do you think you are? Every single word of his was trampling on the face of the demon hall. It was extremely humiliating. Some were angry, some were happy. When these words fell into Yiqing Luo's ears, it was like the sweetest honey in the world, sweet right into her heart. The girl's face was as beautiful as a painting. Her long and narrow eyes were curved, and the joy emitted from the bottom of her heart. Not far away, Yi Jiu and Zhu Wuxin saw it clearly. Light flowed in Zhu Wuxin's cold and deep eyes. In the end, they turned into a pool of stagnant water that was as still as water. They sank and could no longer cause any ripples. Yi Jiu propped up his chin with interest and clicked his tongue as he muttered to himself, Aya, it's rare for a girl to fancy, but she already has someone in her heart. This king's future princess has run away again, what a pity. So, you've disrupted my wedding ceremony, and I can't pursue the matter? Demonic Palace sneered as he pushed the groom aside forcefully, do you see that? This is the girl you want. She already has a husband and doesn't even want to take a look at you. The groom staggered a few steps from the push. His face was gloomy as his deep eyes stared angrily at Demonic Palace. His low and hoarse voice was filled with threat, Demonic Palace, if you still want the wedding to continue, then shut up. Demonic Palace opened his mouth but swallowed back his words. That cold and elegant face was covered with a thick layer of haze. Chapter 51:13. Heh. In this strange silent atmosphere, a soft heh was especially obvious. Devil Palace and the groom's vision turned over in unison. The frost in their eyes was like a sharp blade. Dmo Xian's expression was calm as he met their gazes, his dark red lips curled into a casual cold arc. That soft heh came from his mouth. Devil Palace, you should rejoice. This wedding is now interrupted. The man's voice carried a hint of indifference and laziness, as if he was mocking something. Devil Palace's expression sunk, not understanding the man's words. Dmo Xian's gaze fell onto the groom as he gave a mocking smile, an impostor, dare to impersonate the overlord in the devil region. You've got some guts. Dmo Xian's words left his mouth. Instantly it set off a huge uproar. Everyone looked at the groom in disbelief. Impostor? Impersonate the overlord? This Dizun is a fake? How could this be possible? What rubbish are you talking about? Devil Palace berated sternly as his eyes were filled with a chilly intent. Whether it's rubbish or not, Devil Palace will find out soon. Dmo Xian's tone was indifferent as he looked at the groom with a smile which didn't look like a smile. I wonder if this groom needs to quibble a little? The groom's gaze was cold and there was no expression on his handsome face. His ink-black eyes were like a sharp blade, I don't need to explain. He had learnt the overlord's cold and aloof attitude. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she stared at the groom without blinking, her eyes were filled with deep meaning. Actually, this imposter overlord. There was really no difference between him and Dmo Xian. No matter if it was in terms of appearance or character, it was almost a copy. Even when he was testing if she was Yiqing Luo. That emotion, that expression, that feeling. It was exactly the same as what Dmo Xian had expressed. If it wasn't for the fact that she had an inexplicable intuition towards Dmo Xian, plus her absolute trust towards Dmo Xian, she was afraid that when she saw this groom at the wedding venue, she really knew how to create trouble and ruin the venue. Wait. Copy? Yiqing Luo suddenly thought of something as her slender fingers clasped Dmo Xian's wrist tightly. The man lowered his head and looked at her. Yiqing Luo took a look at the groom as she suppressed her voice. That groom might be some kind of sorcery, a replica. This was similar to what she knew about clones in the 21st century. He had inherited the original owner's appearance, personality, and memories. Only then could they achieve a 100% similarity. However, in the end, a replica was just a replica. As long as he paid a little attention, he would be able to tell. But what Yiqing Luo was conflicted about was, if this groom before her eyes was really a replica of Dmo Xian. Then was Dmo Xian's profound grade also copied over? If that was the case, the bridegroom's strength was too strong. Dmo Xian lightly patted the back of her hand and smiled, "I'm here, everything's fine." Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes. He nodded at him, relieved. For Dmo Xian to say this, it meant that he already had a plan in mind. He probably already knew the identity of the groom. Madame Huang Ci. The demon lord was furious. He pointed his gun at Huang Ci. "This is the guest you brought? You're determined to disrupt my wedding, aren't you?" Huang Ci was a little dazed when she was called out. She was the clearest about Yiqing Luo's motive for coming to Devil Head City. She was indeed here for the Overlord. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.